The wind moaned through the broken battlements of Winterfell like the lonely song of an ancient animal, one too old to remember its own name. Snow danced in that wind, fine, dry crystals that swirled between the blackened teeth of the gate towers before settling in thin veils over the courtyard's churned mud and torn banners. Dawn hid behind a lid of slate-gray cloud, turning everything the color of old iron. The stone ramparts, the withered heart tree in the godswood, and the faces of the men and women who waited for death. Somewhere in that hush before sunrise, the three-eyed raven opened his eyes. Bran Stark did not sit, but rather existed, at the base of the heart tree, his small body wrapped in furs the color of dusk. The carved weirwood face above him wept sap like blood-streaked tears. Ravens watched from the branches, their black feathers dusted white. Their eyes glowed an uncanny, green-seer green. In their vision, Bran saw every thread of time's tapestry. Bright futures that frayed into shadow, dark pasts stitching themselves into unbearable tomorrows. Yet in all those woven strands one knot remained stubborn, snarled around the name of a bastard who was no bastard at all, Jon Snow. If Jon remembered everything, the tapestry twisted into ruin. Daenerys aflame with dragonfire inside her own mind. Arya turned to a vengeful ghost walking a poisoned earth, Sansa ruling over ashes instead of fields. And the Night King, cold certainty walking on two legs, would feel the living hopes tremble, would quicken his pace. So the Raven decided. Ice cracked beneath Bran's wheels as the chair inched forward. His breath fogged the air. A raven fluttered down, claws pin-pricking his numb fingers. Its beak opened without cawing, and a voice older than the first men whispered, "Make the choice, little king." Bran closed his eyes again, but the weirwood realm leapt up to meet him, a boundless river of memories streaming past. Ned's gentle hand upon a newborn's brow. A boy with wild black curls laughing as he failed to tumble-turn in the courtyard. The rasp of Jeor Mormont's voice at Craster's Keep. Longclaw flashing silver amid whites, dripping frozen ichor. Then softer scenes. Candlelight on Ygritte's red hair, Sam's fellowship in dark corridors of stone, the warmth of Ghost's flank against Jon's thigh. Forgive me, Bran thought, though he knew forgiveness mattered less than the living's desperate need to survive one more dawn. He plucked those shining beads of memory, childhood, love, blood, betrayal, one by one from the river and cast them into the dark where forgotten dreams went to die. Jon's story unraveled until only the threads necessary for today remained. His name, his sword, his duty. The rest dissolved like snowflakes upon a brazier. Far across the castle, Jon Snow woke with a gasp. The small chamber above the armory smelled of steel dust and damp straw. Jon lurched upright on the narrow cot, breathing hard, heart galloping beneath his nightshirt, sweat iced on his skin. A single tallow candle guttered, limning the walls with skittish shadows. Ghost lay curled beside the door, crimson eyes half glowing. The direwolf's ears pricked forward at Jon's start, but he did not rise. He only watched as though trying to recognize his master. Jon's hand flew to his chest. What was that dream? Flame and darkness and wings of night. Memories melted as soon as they formed. His head throbbed like a forge hammered on from within. He swung his legs to the floorboards. Cold bit his bare feet, sharp enough to make him wince. Winterfell's familiar stone beneath, the sense of home, should have anchored him, yet the chamber felt wrong, misplaced, like walking into a song mid-verse and realizing you did not know the tune. A knock rattled the door. "Jon!" It was Samwell Tarly, voice thick with nerves. Jon cleared his throat, but even that echoed strangely in his ears, as though it belonged to another man stealing sound through him. "Come." Sam entered, lantern in hand. His cheeks were mottled red from the cold. The army of the dead is less than a league away. Daenerys' scouts saw their vanguard crest the ridge an hour past. He paused, peering. "You all right? You look—" He didn't finish. Jon scrubbed a hand through his hair. "Bad dream. Bad dreams will feel gentle by sunset," Sam said with a tremulous smile. Then he lifted a canvas-wrapped bundle. "Gilly and I finished stitching the black banner you wanted. He unwound the cloth to reveal a dire wolf rampant beneath the words Night's Watch. Not much paint to spare, but Jon stared, heart squeezing, though he could not recall why he'd asked Sam for such a banner. His mind felt like a shield left out in frost, brittle, blank with frost flowers. "Thank you," he managed, sounded thin. They readied together. Sam waited while Jon donned layers of boiled leather and mail. Each buckle and strap found its place by muscle memory, though his brain flailed behind, begging direction. Longclaw lay on the table, Valyrian steel catching the candle's flare. He ran his thumb along the ridged hilt shaped like a wolf's head. Father's gift. The thought came unbidden, but which father? The absence hurt worse than any sword cut. Sam must have sensed something amiss. He hovered, twisting the lantern ring between chapped fingers. "Jon, are we going to survive this?" Jon breathed slowly. Duty remained, bright and stark as fresh-fallen snow. "We have to." Ghost rose then, shaking frost from his coat. He padded forward, nuzzling Jon's hand with cool nose. Jon scratched behind the wolf's ear and felt a pang, loss of something he could not name. But Ghost too seemed to search his face, as though sniffing for memories he no longer carried. They crossed the yard toward the battlements. Torches bobbed like will-o'-wisps in the gloom. Unsullied stood in perfect ranks by the gates, shields rimmed with hoarfrost. Northern men shuffled behind crude barricades, their breath drifting upward in fleeting clouds. Knights of the Vale murmured prayers in the courtyard's shadowy alcoves. Over it all hung a hush, expectant, terrible. Jon felt eyes follow him. Lyanna Mormont's fierce stare, Tormund's wolfish grin tempered by worry, Gendry's hammer resting on his shoulder. He recognized each face, each bond of camaraderie, but behind recognition yawned a hollow gulf where emotion once lived. Did I know them better, deeper? The thought slipped away and he walked on. Atop the Godswood Ridge Bran waited beneath the heart tree. Arya crouched behind its roots, sharpening a dragonglass spear. Sansa stood, pale, wrapped in a cloak sewn from direwolf pelts. Bran's gaze tracked Jon across the snow, eyes unreadable. "You came," Bran said. Jon frowned. "You summoned me?" "Not in words." Bran's lips barely moved. "But you felt it all the same." Jon's jaw tightened. Something prickled at the back of his skull. A child's voice singing of home, of laughter in warm kitchens. "Gone. There isn't time for riddles." Bran's pupils dilated, as if reflecting some distant blaze invisible to others. "You are ready," he murmured. "Ready for what?" Arya asked, slipping the spearhead into its socket. War paint streaked her cheeks. Her gray eyes flicked to Jon and softened an instant, then hardened again. "He looks half dead." "I am ready for whatever comes," Jon said, though he doubted the words even as they left his mouth. Sansa touched his arm gently. "Brother, you seem... Are you truly well?" He looked at her freckled face, felt the bond of shared childhood, but the memories refused to surface, like a book with pages torn out. Still, he managed a small smile. "It's nerves." Sansa's eyes lingered on him. At length she nodded, though worry etched new lines beside her mouth. She retreated to the keep, cloak trailing like a dark comet tail. Arya twirled her spear, testing the balance. "I'll take my post on the ramparts." She punched Jon's shoulder, light but potent. "Don't die." Jon's answering grin felt hollow, a mask he'd forgotten how to wear. When they were alone, Bran spoke not as a boy but as time incarnate. "There is a cost to every choice." "I hæve bordene mine." "Now you carry yours." Jon swallowed. "What did you do?" The question leaked out before he could clamp his teeth around it. "I opened a door and closed another." Bran's breath misted. "The Night King seeks me. He always did. But I needed one who could face him without chains of love slowing his sword." His gaze seemed to pierce skin and bone. "I needed you unburdened." Jon felt the truth strike him like a mailed fist. He staggered, memories gone. He pressed fingers to his temple as if he could pry back the sealing wax. "You took them. Not forever." Only until the world is safe enough for you to carry them. Bran's voice held neither apology nor pride, only inevitability. Rage flickered across Jon's hollow heart like kindling catching spark. It died quickly. The space within him was too cold to hold flame. Only steel remained, and a bleak sense of purpose. Then I had better live long enough to remember. Bran inclined his head. Trumpets blared from the outer wall. The army of the dead had arrived. The sky above Winterfell darkened not with nightfall but with the beating of vast, silent wings. Viserion, blue fire leaking from his split ribs, circled once, twice, then screamed a stream of frostfire across the battlements. Stone cracked, men screamed, torches guttered. Yet within that moment of terror Jon felt a strange calm. The void inside left no room for dread. He mounted the parapet. To the south, fires glittered across the trench lines. The unsullied braced spears. Dothraki ghosts wavered on the horizon. Remnants of a charge extinguished like candles in a gale. Above, Drogon and regal sword, scales flashing ember red and pine green beneath the stormy dawn. Daenerys hovered astride Drogon, her silver braid whipped behind her. She sought Jon's eyes across the void, but he stared blankly, unable to recall love, betrayal, or the taste of her lips that had once been as familiar as his own breath. She frowned, confusion flickering. Then necessity dragged her gaze to the white tide rushing forward. The dead crashed against the thorn barriers of dragonglass. Pike's shields splintered. Horses shrieked. Men vanished under clawing hands. Jon vaulted down stone steps, ghost at his heel. He plunged into the melee where unsullied lines buckled under undead weight. Longclaw flashed starbright, cleaving skulls. Each strike felt mechanical, efficient. There was no fear to quicken or dull his hand. Only duty. Tormund barreled in from the right, great axe sending two whites spinning headless. Snow! He bellowed, joy and terror mingled. You fight like a man with nothing left to lose. Jon's mouth twisted. Perhaps I am. Don't dare die before I buy you that drink, Tormund roared, laughter echoing even here. They fought back to back, steel and dragonglass shrieking against dead bones. Yet the tide rose inexorably. Every gap a white slipped through multiplied tenfold a heartbeat later. Then a horn sounded from the inner wall. Giant shapes lumbering, whites from a different nightmare. Giants, skin gray and eyes eclipsed. One swung a frozen club, smashing barricades and men alike. Jon sprinted toward it, knowing speed would matter more than strength. The giant reared, roaring. Jon dodged under its swing, felt icy wind graze his cloak. He leapt onto broken timber, climbing its frozen fur like a living ladder. Longclaw clutched reverse grip. The giant's paw swatted, missed. Jon reached its neck and drove Valyrian steel to the hilt. Blue light flickered, then extinguished. The colossus toppled, shaking the ground. Jon rolled free, lungs burning, but he felt nothing except the steady throb of his heart. No triumph, no terror. Someone screamed behind him. Gendry, pinned beneath a skeletal horse. Jon heaved the beast aside with Tormund's help. They hauled Gendry up, his leg poured blood. Arya darted in, blurring whip-quick, daggers flashing like starlight. Jon caught a momentary look of relief in her eyes, then puzzlement, as if she had expected some greeting he could no longer give. Go, he told her. The crypts. She vanished toward the Godswood instead, as if guided by some private gravity. The night swallowed her. Hours bled into hours. The trench fires died under White Walker's frost. The inner gate groaned. Jon found himself forced inexorably backward, step by step, until the courtyard of the broken tower became the last redoubt. Daenerys dismounted beside him. Drogon coiled above the battlements, tail swinging, wings tattered from white swarm gouges. Snow clung to her hair like silver threads. Her violet eyes blazed. We hold here, she said over the din. Jon nodded, though some chord struck discordant at her voice, as though it belonged to a story he scarcely remembered. They fought shoulder to shoulder, fire and steel in tandem. Jon's severed torsos, Daenerys's Valyrian blade, donated by Yora in another life, found cervicals with dancer's grace. Ghost lunged, ripping throats. Every fallen enemy dissolved to shards, yet the gaps filled faster than wounds closed. And then cold deeper than tomb silence poured into the yard. Jon sensed him before he saw him. The Night King, tall as a dead cedar, skin the color of twilight. Ice blue eyes locked on the godswood where Bran waited. Jon dashed forward, but the Night King raised one hand. Blue lightning rippled through corpses. Around Jon, friends and foes alike reanimated, jaws clacking. Gendry's corpse lurched, eyes blazing winter. Lyanna Mormont, broken-backed, rose with frost encrusting her lips. Jon's breath hitched, but memoryless, grief glanced off him like blunted arrows. He hacked downward, sinew parted. He carved a path, yet for every white fell 2 rows. Daenerys yelled above, "Dracarys!" Drogon's flame erupted, turning whites and half the yard to pyres. The Night King walked through the inferno untouched, frost hissing where dragonfire met his aura. Jon charged. Longclaw's edge rang against the Night King's spear, a shriek of ice meeting ancient steel. Sparks hissed in the frozen air. The Night King pivoted, cut. Jon parried, but numbness leapt up his arm where the spear glanced off mail. Strike, parry, slip. Jon fought with the ferocity of emptiness. No fear of death, no clinging to life. Yet the Night King's strength was that of 1,000 stolen winters. Slowly, inevitably, Jon faltered. The spear tip sliced his thigh, warmth spilled and steamed. He dropped to one knee. The Night King lifted the spear to impale. Memory slammed into Jon like a breaking wave. Ned's voice. "You may not have my name, but you have my blood." Ygritte's laugh in a steam-wreathed cave. "You know nothing, Jon Snow." Daenerys's whisper. "We break the wheel together." The stolen pieces flooded back. Love, grief, hope, betrayal. Ice cracked by sudden spring. The void filled with fire enough to melt the wall. Jon's scream tore the air. He thrust upward. Longclaw bit into the spear's haft, shattering it. His momentum carried him to his feet. He swung again, two-handed. The Night King leapt back, but Bran's voice spoke through the ravens overhead. Now. Arya burst from shadow behind the Night King, Valyrian dagger raised. He caught her by the throat, but Jon lunged, hamstringing him. Arya dropped, rolled, drove the dagger into his chest. Jon's steel cleaved through the same wound. Blue light fractured like glass. The Night King's eyes widened, not in fear but in recognition, as if he saw in Jon the echo of rightful memory. Then he shattered, a comet of frost scattering to brilliance. Across Winterfell, whites collapsed like puppets with cut strings. Snowflakes drifted in sudden silence. Fires crackled. Somewhere a child sobbed. The living, astonished to still draw breath. Jon stood amid the ruin, chest heaving. Blood soaked his thigh. Arya leaned against him, spent. Daenerys descended the broken stair, Drogon's wing beats stirring ash. Bran wheeled from the godswood, eyes gentle. Sansa, Tyrion, Davos, Tormund. One by one they gathered, each face streaked with soot and tears. Jon met their gazes, and this time the warmth behind his eyes belonged to him again. The tapestry reknotted itself, scars shining like seams of gold in cracked pottery. He limped to Bran. "You gave them back." Bran looked small, only a boy, yet still infinite. "The world is safe enough now." Jon exhaled, half laughter, half sob. Grief flooded him for those lost in battle. Love flared anew for those still breathing. Hope trembled uncertainly for what came next. But he was whole even in his brokenness, whole. He turned to the survivors clustered in the dawn's first gold-pink light. Clouds parted. Sun spilled across the battlefield, mingling with ash to paint the ground in fire and snow. Jon Snow raised Longclaw's blood-blackened blade. Voice rough, he spoke not as king, nor as commander, but as one man among many. "We remember the fallen, we rebuild for the living, and we fight on together." A cheer rose, ragged, exhausted, indomitable. Above them the ravens wheeled, their croaks carried on a newborn breeze that smelled faintly of spring. And somewhere deep in the crypt of things forgotten, the weirwood roots stirred, content, for now, to let the song of life continue. End of part 1. Snow had ceased falling by mid-morning, yet a thin silver mist clung to the courtyards where so many lives had guttered out. Jon moved through it like a man only half returned from death, every footstep marked by the slow throb in his gashed thigh. Maester Wolkin's poultice, a pungent mash of basilisk blood moss and boiling wine, stung worse than the cut itself, and the bandage beneath his riding leathers felt hot as a coal. But he refused a litter. Too many watched him. Too many needed to see their commander standing. Work parties crisscrossed the bailey around him. Unsullied shoveled heaps of frozen limbs into wagons bound for the pyres outside the walls. Northern boys, some not yet old enough to shave, collected shields and spears, stacking them in neat rows while speaking soft prayers. In one corner, Gilly organized a crude infirmary, her sleeves dark with other people's blood. Sam knelt beside her, binding wounds and murmuring comfort even as tears streaked his cheeks. Farther on, Tormund hacked at a toppled gatepost, splinters flying while he laughed through the smoke of his pipe. He bellowed orders to a line of hall boys dragging lumber. "Faster, little giants, faster, or the chilly dead will rise just to shame your speed." Jon paused atop the cracked flagstones where the Night King had fallen. Sunlight glinted on shards of ancient ice still embedded in the stone, each fragment now dull and lifeless. He stooped, pried a sliver free, and held it between thumb and forefinger. Beneath the surface, a faint, ghostly swirl reminded him of the winter storm that had almost swallowed the world. Wind buffeted his cloak. The shard winked, then melted into a single droplet and vanished. A memory, nothing more. Lord Snow. The rasp came from Ser Davos, limping toward him with a ledger tucked under one arm. Frost clung to the Onion Knight's beard like crumbs of crystal. "Pyres are ready," he said. "Wolkin thinks burning should start before dusk. He fears rot sets quicker in spring thaw." "It isn't spring," Jon answered, scanning the colorless sky. Davos shrugged. "Feels closer than yesterday. Perhaps the dead took winter with them when they left." Jon almost smiled. The attempt felt foreign, as though his face were not yet reacquainted with warmth. "I'll tell the commanders. And Davos, thank you. For what, Lord? For living." Jon touched the older man's wrist once, then strode on before gratitude made his scarred throat close. Near the well, Arya practiced wheel cuts with a dragonglass staff, its bladed ends whistling through empty air. Each spin sent cinders spinning from her boots. She stopped when Jon approached, tilting her head like a sparrow measuring distance to crumb. He noticed bruises purple beneath grime at her jawline, the Night King's grip. Fury flared inside him, bright as the first torch struck after dusk. "He's gone," she said, reading the blaze in his eyes. "Save your anger for those still breathing." She tucked the staff into a loop on her belt. "You know why Bran did it, don't you?" Jon looked toward the Godswood, where Bran sat beneath the heart tree again, eyes tracking ravens that wheeled overhead like flecks of coal. "Because he saw paths I couldn't walk burdened." "Did he ask first?" Arya's tone was all steel. Jon forced the next breath slowly from his lungs. "No," the single syllable tasted like cold iron. "If he ever tries to reach into me that way," Arya's lip curled, "he'll find his fingers gone." "He won't," Jon said, "because he must believe it." He rested a palm on her shoulder. "We'll speak tonight." Arya gave a curt nod and stalked off toward the ramparts. Jon watched her silhouette shrinking against stone and wondered whether any living foe could match her now. At the base of the broken tower, a cluster of knights from the Vale awaited him, Ser Royce at their head. Their heavy plate bore cracks spidering across breastplates, but each helm remained plumed and polished. Royce bowed stiffly. "Lord Snow, pardon, King in the North," he corrected. Jon shook his head. "No king. Call me what you will, but I'm no better than you. Your sword says otherwise. The men need a banner." Royce unslung a bundle of cloth, black, marked by a white direwolf, and extended it. The houses will look to you until the Targaryen queen leads south, and she rides soon. Jon accepted the banner by reflex, fingers brushing coarse wool. The black direwolf of the watch on a kingly field. Sam's handiwork sat heavy as prophecy itself. He folded it again. "Thank you, sir. I'll consider." Royce bowed once more, then left, boots crunching through blood-stiff snow. Jon turned toward the great hall. Inside, a hush that was almost holy reigned. Giant hearths crackled, but the benches remained empty save for Sansa, quill in hand at the high table. Parchments lay scattered like leaves. She glanced up, eyes rimmed red yet flint-hard. "I'm drafting lists of the fallen," she said without greeting. "Names matter, even in mass graves." "Pyres," Jon corrected gently. "We burn them tonight." "I know." Sansa set her quill down, rubbed at an ink smudge on her wrist. "The queen wants a feast first, a celebration for victory." Her voice tightened, as though the word itself were a betrayal. Jon drew a chair opposite her. "Men need fires of joy as well as burial. But not yet, I think. Tell her that." He ran a hand through windswept hair. "I will." Sansa's gaze lingered. "Something in you shifted, Jon. When you look at me, it's as though you're trying to remember who I am." Tension braided through his shoulders. "I am." The truth slipped free before he censored it. "Bran took memories, to spare me burden. They returned at the end." He paused, lowering his voice though no one else listened. "But some are still dull around the edges. Faces blur. Mumin sleep." Sansa's lips parted. She reached across scrolls to clasp his fingers. "You should rest. Rest later." He squeezed back. "We speak at dusk, you and Arya and Bran. Secrets among Starks." He meant his parentage and saw by the flicker in her eyes she guessed the subject. Nodding once, she released him and returned to the ink and the dead. Jon climbed the western stair that snaked along the hall's outer wall. Near the top, a narrow landing overlooked the courtyard where blacksmiths hammered bent mail straight. The clang rang like temple bells. Tyrion waited there, perched on a stool too tall for him, dangling his legs. "Lord Snow," the dwarf called, voice echoing. "Or shall I call you something grander?" Jon halted before him. "I've had my fill of titles." Tyrion's brows quirked. He patted the spot beside him. Jon leaned against the wall instead. From here the view spanned Winterfell's broken gate to the fields beyond, now dotted with pyre mounds. "Her grace frets," Tyrion said, folding his hands. "She fears the people cheer you louder than her dragons." Jon considered that. "They cheer survival, not me. Survivors choose symbols." Tyrion's eyes, sharp as whetted jade, measured him. "Whatever you believe yourself to be, the North has crowned you in its heart. That crown weighs like iron brands on burned flesh. Better brands than shackles," Tyrion murmured. "Your memory, I hear, was tempered last night." Jon stiffened. "Varys claims whispers travel faster than ravens," Tyrion continued. "Bran's experiment will not stay hidden for long." "Experiment," Jon echoed, anger stirring. "That's what we are now? Specimens on the Citadel's slab." "In the Maester's sense," Tyrion allowed. "One cannot change fate without test and error." Jon's jaw worked. Finally he said, "Tell the Queen I'll meet her by the gods' wood at midday." Tyrion dipped his head, satisfaction or worry playing across his face. Jon could not tell which. He slipped from the stool and limped away. Sun climbed higher, glinting off patched roofs. Jon crossed walkways until the scent of pine sap signaled the godswood ahead. Bran waited beneath the heart tree as ever, feral red leaves rustling over his head though no breeze stirred. The ravens had gone. His only companions were roots thick as serpents looping through snow like ivory bones. "You're angry," Bran said before Jon spoke. "I am." Jon stood before him. "Angry you stripped me of myself. Angry you decided without asking." Bran blinked. "I saw a thread where you fell. pierced by the Night King's spear because a single thought of Daenerys slowed your blade. I severed that thread. And if love slows me elsewhere? Jon challenged. Will you cut deeper next time? There will be no next time, Bran said, calm as still water reflecting storm clouds. The greatest threat is gone. Jon laughed. Raw. Threats multiply. The South festers. Cersei still sits the throne, and Daenerys. She fears losing what she believes is hers. Bran's pupils widened until Iris vanished. And you are both sword and secret in that contest. Jon exhaled through his nose. You saw visions. I see possibilities. She could become fire without mercy, but also torch that lights a new age, which depends on choices soon made. Jon knelt in frozen dirt so their eyes nearly met. Then counsel me, brother. How do we walk a path that spares the living war? Truth must root before peace blossoms. Bran's gaze drifted to the black puddle of sap at the heart tree's base. Tell her. Tell them all. Footfalls crunched beyond the ring of weirwood trees. Jon turned. Daenerys approached, white ermine cloak sweeping snow. Drogon perched on the Godswood's wall behind her like a living siege tower, neck weaving as he sniffed resin-laden air. The queen's eyes fixed on Jon. Something like pain trembled under her composure. Bran, she said in greeting, though her tone carried frost. Bran inclined his head. She confronted Jon. You vanished after the battle. I bled, he answered lightly. Found fresh bandages. Her gaze flicked to the wrapped thigh. Would that your spirit could be mended as quickly. When I looked at you from Drogon's back last night, your eyes were strangers. Her hand rose, but halted inches from his cheek, fingers curling inward. Now I see the man She broke off. Bran rolled his chair back. I should leave you. No, Jon said. Stay. He swallowed. My queen, I owe you truth. I am more than Ned Stark's bastard. She waited, breath steaming in the chill. Jon spoke names he had rehearsed only in nightmares. Lyanna Stark, Rhaegar Targaryen, the Isle of Faces marriage, the Tower of Joy birth. Words filled the glade. Ravens descended to branches overhead as though drawn by cadence. When he finished, silence yawned. Daenerys' face was unreadable marble. You are telling me I risked everything for a throne that belongs to another Targaryen? I want no throne, Jon said, shoulders bowing under weight of spoken heritage. I bend the knee still, but secret breeds ruin. I will not hide in darkness again. Who else knows? Sansa, Arya, Sam, Jon admitted. And now Bran, you, Tyrion soon enough. Not Tyrion. Grief cracked her voice. At least allow me time to breathe before every spider in Westeros spins this. Tension thickened. Drogon hissed, deep bass rumble vibrating through pine boughs. Jon stood unmoving. Bran watched as though already remembering what would happen. Will you swear it will die here? Daenerys whispered. Jon's silence answered. Her eyes glazed with unshed tears, but when she spoke again, iron replaced sorrow. Then I march south in 3 days. Those who wish to ride with me may. Those who hesitate, stay and guard the ashes. Jon stepped forward. We should heal. Mourn. Every day we mourn, Cersei grows stronger. I have dragons. Blood of my blood spilled to stop the Night King. Dragons wounded. I will not pause while the lioness sharpens claws. Bran's chair creaked as he wheeled closer. If you fly now, you fly into storms you cannot yet name. Prophecies have ruled my life far enough, she snapped. Jon caught her hand. I'll ride with you, but not until the pyres burn. Not until we honor the dead who bought us dawn. She met his gaze. Long moments passed. Finally she nodded once, short as a sword stroke. 3 days for the dead. Then south. She turned, cloak swirling, and walked away beneath Drogon's watchful wing. When she was gone, Jon exhaled shakily. Bran's voice whispered, balance hangs by a dragon's breath. Jon pressed palms to eyes. And you see where it tilts? See, yes. Stop, no. That is yours. Bran's thin hand settled on Jon's wrist, featherlight. Carry truth or bury it, both sow wars. But truth grown in trust may yield peace. Jon left him then, thoughts grinding like frost-stiff gears. He found the armory, rewrapped his bandage, then joined soldiers oiling blades, small tasks grounding him. Afternoon waned into raw amber. Horns sounded to summon all within earshot to the field beyond the walls. There, hundreds of wooden plinths rose like crooked teeth from muddy earth. Each bore linens wrapped around forms already stiff. Torches passed from hand to hand, their flames guttering in gusts that smelled of charred pine. Sansa stood at one end between Arya and Bran. Jon took place beside her. Daenerys faced them across the rows, flanked by Grey Worm and Missandei. Behind her, Drogon and Rhaegal perched on shattered ramparts, wings mantled. Snow-kicked clouds burned rose gold as the sun kissed horizon. A hush vast as the winter sea settled. Jon stepped forward first, raised his torch. "We remember," he said, voice carrying. "We remember the living who gave breath that dawn might come for others. We remember those gone to the night who shared this fire of life with us. We will carry their names past the end of days." He touched flame to the nearest pyre. Sansa followed, tears streaking ash-smudged cheeks. Arya's torch left smokeless fire on black cloth. One by one the rows ignited, heat rolling back like a dragon's sigh. Crackle swallowed weeping. Drums pounded slow funeral cadence. Sparks spiraled into dusk where the first stars emerged shyly. Jon watched faces flicker in firelight. Gendry supporting limp Podrick. Davos reciting prayers under breath. Tormund tilting his head back, letting smoke sting eyes already raw. He breathed minted pine resin and scorched flesh until sorrow numbed. Later, beneath a moon half-veiled, he stood in the godswood once more, alone save ghost curled at his feet. The direwolf's coat glowed silver in starlight. His red eyes mirrored fire's dying coals. Jon heard boots crunch behind him, turned to find Sansa. "Wine flows in the hall," she said. "Songs already rise. I needed quiet first." She crossed the snow and leaned beside him against a root. Wind rustled leaves overhead, summer's ghost in winter's boughs. "Do you trust her?" Sansa asked softly. Jon understood which her. He considered. "I trust her heart. I fear her fear." Sansa toyed with a dangling red leaf. "A queen who thinks herself alone can be as dangerous as any monster of ice. She is not alone. You are not a shield maiden token to calm her storms. You are fire born of ice and blood. She knows it now." Jon turned, startled. Sansa's smile was sad. Arya guessed when Bran recalled father's words about honor and secret love. Sam confirmed, crying with relief he hadn't misread his parchment. "The truth circles even when we hush it." She met his gaze. "I will not wield it as a blade, but neither will I bury it." The North bent knee for survival, not subservience. He exhaled white mist. "Give me time. Time's wings beat faster than ravens, brother." She squeezed his forearm, then departed. Ghost chuffed, nose twitching toward the wall. Jon followed the wolf's gaze to where Daenerys' shadow crossed the battlements, silver hair shimmering. He hesitated, then strode up the guard stair. She stood watching pyre glow painting distant hills ruddy. "I thought I was the last of my line," she said without turning. Titles never mattered as much as that, being the final ember of a burned-out house. She hugged herself. "Now I feel small because I am not unique." Jon leaned arms on stone beside her. "You are you. Dragons answer your voice, not mine. They answer Targaryen blood. Blood doesn't bind hearts." He looked at her profile, sharp and luminous. "Rhaegal let me ride because he trusted you trusted me." She faced him. "Will you stand at my side in King's Landing?" "Until breath leaves me," he vowed. She searched his eyes for cracks, found only weary sincerity. The lines at her brow softened. "Then come inside. Even heroes need warmth." She offered her hand. He took it. Together they descended to the hall where tables groaned beneath venison haunches and wheels of goat cheese, where men and women roared ballads thick with gratitude and grief. where survivors drank to forget how close darkness had pressed against their eyelids. Torches blazed. Shadows cavorted on rafters like orphaned wraiths now freed from Night King's leash. Gendry swayed before the high table as Daenerys lifted her goblet. "Gendry Rivers," she proclaimed, voice carrying to every corner. "Step forward." Murmurs rippled. Gendry blinked, wiping ale from his beard. "Your father fought for House Baratheon," she said. "He died forging steel for his king. Last night you forged courage for all kingdoms. For that bravery I legitimize you. Rise, Gendry Baratheon, Lord of Storm's End." A cheer shook banners overhead. Gendry's eyes brimmed as he knelt, and Jon felt pride pulse. Yet he also noticed Sansa's stiff smile, and Tyrion's calculating glance, and Arya's faint frown. Daenerys had purchased a lord with generosity, but perhaps also bid for the room's allegiance. Later, chalices emptied and filled again. Brienne arm-wrestled Tormund while Podrick sang a ballad so pure it stilled even the rowdiest cell's word. Davos told crude jokes to Grey Worm, who did not laugh but listened, and Missandei laughed both for herself and her stoic commander. Jon sat among Night's Watch brothers who had found new purpose as free men, while Ghost dozed beneath the table gnawing a marrow bone. Hours slipped like warm honey until music dulled, torches sputtered. Daenerys retired first, flanked by Unsullied. Jon lingered, uneasy to leave the North's hearth for her bed. At last he rose. Sam, half asleep against pillars, waved him off with bleary grin. Outside, moonlight silvered the courtyard, emptied now save for pairs slipping into shadows. Jon's feet led him not toward the Queen's chambers but to the crypts. He descended torchless. The chill guided him, as familiar as breath in winter. Stale air smelled of dust and ancient honor. He halted before Lyanna's statue. Candles guttered, casting illusions of movement across her stone face. Hands carved in white marble cradled a bundle that might have been infant or sword. In flicker it seemed to pulse, alive. He knelt. "Mother," he whispered, tasting the word aloud for the first time. "I have given your name breath again, but every truth is dagger-edged. If blood must flow for it, let it be mine." Soft tread behind him. Sam emerged, lamp raised. He offered a shy nod of apology for intrusion. "Couldn't sleep," he said. "Too many ghosts beneath my eyelids." Jon stood, pulling cloak tighter. Understandable place to flee them. Sam fumbled with a leather satchel. "I reviewed Maester Ibro's annals. There's precedent for claim by senior line even if parents wed in secrecy. If the throne passes by primogeniture Jon lifted a palm. "I won't press claim."
Sames shifted.
What you want and what others want rarely align. If lords begin to question, scriptures may matter. Scriptures matter less than swords. Then let us hope words still hold power. Sam looked at Lyanna's statue with scholarly reverence, then back. "Before the pyres, Gilly told me a story about the wildlings. They believe memory is a tree. Storms may strip leaves, but roots go deep. Sap rises again come spring." Jon managed a thin smile. "Roots keep me standing, no matter whose axes swing." They left crypts together, emerging to dawn's gray hush. In distance, pyre ashes drifted like black snow on faint morning breeze. Jon inhaled smoke and frost and new budding spruce. Somewhere a raven cawed thrice. He wondered if Bran heard. 3 days would pass quick as eyelid flutter. Then march south, dragon wings against southern sun. He thought of Cersei at her window of shattered rubies, Qyburn's whispered plots, Euron's grin. He thought of wildfire caches slumbering under streets like spiteful serpents. He thought of Daenerys's eyes when she begged secrecy. He thought of Sansa's warning, Arya's silent vow, Tyrion's watchful counsel. Truth shall root or rot. Ghost brushed his knee. Jon laid a hand on the direwolf's broad skull. Together they gazed across Winterfell. Their home, their weight, their promise, and felt dawn's pale light unfurl across a world forever changed yet fragile as glass cooled too fast. When sun finally cleared the distant treeline it set ash motes ablaze, and for one breath every drifting speck looked like a new star falling upward, tiny, perilous, blazing with possibility. Night clung to Winterfell in the quiet hours before dawn, the corridors hushed save for the distant clatter of a lone pot banging in the kitchens. Jon paced the gallery above the great hall, cloak pulled tight against the seep of chill that even roaring hearths could not entirely chase from the stone. Shadows rippled acro, as the flags below where overturned benches lay like fallen soldiers and spilled wine glimmered darkly in guttering torchlight. The feast had withered into snores and whispered trysts, but sleep eluded him. Too many voices thrummed at the edges of thought. Some he recognized, some that felt like echoes of dreams Bran had not returned. He reached the window overlooking the practice yard. Lanterns bobbed there already, steel ringing. A few hard-bitten free folk drilling before sun peeked over the ramparts. Tormund's laugh burst out, startling crows on the roof beams. The wildling's cloak was thrown aside, bare chest steaming in the frigid air as he demonstrated an overhand smash to two scrawny northern lads holding pikes too tall for them. Jon watched a moment, warmth twisting at the sight. Whatever dawns came, Tormund would greet them with the same unapologetic roar. Footsteps approached from behind, soft, measured. Tyrion halted beside him, bleary eyes surveying the same tableau. "Mornings feel longer after victory," the dwarf said, voice thick with stale wine and thought. "One might expect triumph to lull a man asleep, yet it does the opposite. We sit on the cusp of new uncertainty, our minds thrumming through possibilities like harpists plucking broken strings." "You drank enough to drown thought," Jon observed. "And yet thought swims," Tyrion replied, rubbing his temples. "Your queen departed early. I suspect she's already counting wagons for the march." He sighed. "She asked me to ensure the northern houses pledge soldiers. It would help if you pressed them." Jon's gaze remained on Tormund's figure. "Not yet. They're sewing shrouds this hour." "Grief quickly becomes protest if left without direction," Tyrion cautioned. "The houses bowed to her cause for winter's sake. Summer winds will blow some of those vows to dust." Jon finally turned. "Will you betray her, as you did once before?" Tyrion's mouth pinched. "My loyalty wavers only between hope and despair. Betrayal sits in neither camp." He tapped the stone windowsill. "See that hope outruns despair, Lord Snow." He departed, steps echoing soft as spilled sand. Jon exhaled. The sky lightened beyond clouds, first hint of peach along eastern rims. He descended the stair to the yard as dawn broke proper. Tormund hailed him, sweat glittering on red beard. "Come spar, Crow King. Show these cubs how a man swings." Jon shook his head. Wounds still closing. Tormund grinned ferally. "Won't matter once southern blades open it anew. Swing now, heal later." He thrust a blunted axe into Jon's palm without waiting. The boys scattered back as Jon tested the weight. Despite himself, a slow grin tugged his lips. They were brothers in arms, still breathing. They circled, boots scrunching frost. Jon's thigh ached but steadied. Tormund lunged. Jon parried, countering with a feint that clipped the wildling's ribs. Laughter burst from both. Frosted breath curled. They moved across the yard in a rhythm older than languages, each clack of steel echoing heartbeats. Jon's mind quieted, memory and worry melting under the honest simplicity of combat drill. When at last they broke apart, panting, the free folk cheering, Jon felt awake in every sinew. Tormund clapped his shoulder. "South needs that fire. Don't let southern airs snuff it." "I'll not forget," Jon said, a promise to himself as much as to the giant with scarred grin. Later, he found Gendry near the smithy stoking a fresh forge flame. Lord of Storm's End now, yet the hammer fit his fist as though titles meant nothing. Sparks cascaded. Gendry dipped his head. "Lord Jon," he corrected, face flushing. "Making more dragonglass arrowheads. Can't march without enough." Jon nodded approval, then asked what weighed heavier, a hammer or a crown. Gendry barked a laugh. "Ask me after I've tried the crown. For now the hammer feels lighter." "Keep forging," Jon said. Storm's End will need a lord who remembers calluses. By mid-morning council bells tolled. The war room above the library thrummed with tension when Jon entered. Maps unfurled across the table showed the King's Road like an artery veined by small tributaries. Daenerys stood at the head, Grey Worm on one flank, Varys and Tyrion opposite. Sansa, Arya, Brienne, Jon Royce, and Davos formed the northern line. Bran remained absent, though a single raven perched on the sill behind Jon, silent sentinel. Daenerys pinned markers. Dothraki and Unsullied form vanguard and rearguard. Northern Levy's travel center with supply carts. Dragonflight patrol above, striking any column daring the road. Sansa folded arms. The King's Road floods this time of year. Wagons bog if rains come. Better skirt west. Follow the ridge trail through the foothills. That path is slower, Tyrion noted, scanning lines of ink. Cersei's scouts could muster ambush at Gold Road Junction. Slower, Sansa allowed, but safer for provisions. Hungry men desert. Her tone implied personal memory of such hunger beneath Ramsay's roof. Grey Worm spoke clipped Valyrian lilted common. Unsullied do not desert. Northern farmers do, Davos said, voice gentle but firm. If their children wait with empty bowls, they go. Daenerys glanced at Jon. What say you? He studied the parchment. Ghost had followed him in, settling by the door, red eyes reflecting candlelight. Jon traced the King's Road line. I rode south once with Night's Watch recruits. Bandits plagued us, even in winter's mouth. If the Queen's enemies learn we're slowed by mud, they might torch supply carts, then vanish. He tapped the ridge path. But they cannot vanish in hills, they'd leave tracks. And we'd be near the Riverrun granaries, friendly lands. Tyrion pushed a token westward. Ser Edmure may still sit embroidering banners of trout and lily. He'll feed us for a chance to redeem House Tully. Daenerys's brow smoothed a fraction. Very well, we take the ridge. But we ride in 2 days, not 3. Sansa stiffened. 2 days does not suffice for mustering bannermen. Daenerys's gaze flared. Those who want a realm free of Cersei will keep pace. Those who lag shall follow later. An uneasy silence thickened. Arya's hand drifted toward the dagger at her belt before easing away. Jon placed his palm on the map beside Daenerys's. 2 days, he said, voice steady yet edged like wet stone. But we march at dawn's first light, after final farewells. Every man who rides with us knows he rides by choice. She searched his eyes, seeking either surrender or assertion. Finding both or neither, she nodded once. The council dissolved, northern lords shuffling out, exchanging murmurs like flutters of caged sparrows. Jon stepped beside Sansa in the corridor. She won't wait longer. No, Sansa agreed, and she won't kneel to the North's caution. Be careful, Jon. You stand between wildfire and oil. He pressed her shoulder. Guard Winterfell. I will guard the North and Bran. Her eyes darkened. Be certain the Queen guards you. Preparations consumed the day. Carpenters reinforced wagon axles. Chests were loaded with dried oatcakes and salt pork. Blacksmiths shoe-nailed horses in ceaseless rhythm. Snowmelt trickled from palisade gaps, pooling in the ruts where men hoisted casks. Children scampered underfoot chasing hoop rings while mothers sewed new seams into wool cloaks. Jon walked among them, offering a hand here, a calming word there. He helped a limping sergeant lashed with last night's burns onto a cart. He lifted a sack of seed grain into a wagon for Riverrun's planting. Each task steadied him, anchored him to tangible acts rather than twisting speculations. Yet all the while he felt Bran's invisible gaze, as though ravens perched on every watchtower. At sunset, he climbed the battlement to find Bran himself wheeled by Podrick, blanket around his knees. The breeze teased Bran's hair. Jon leaned on the crenel. Fields beyond the walls were scarred black where pyres had burned, but tender blades of green already pricked the ash. You will not ride south, Jon said, more statement than question. Bran shook his head. My wings are here. Winterfell needs a weirwood watcher. He pointed with chin to east, where faint thunderclouds bruised the horizon. Storms coming faster than the maesters think. March quick. Jon followed the sky. A line of dark purple rolled, silent still. Will you speak again inside my mind? The question weighed heavy. Only if time fractures, Bran said. You are whole again. The path ahead requires all pieces of you. Even the pieces that love her? The admission felt like striking flint. Especially those, Bran replied. Love guides or consumes, never sits idle. Jon bowed head. When he lifted it, Bran's eyes gleamed mischievous for once. Tell Arya I borrowed her comb. Jon laughed despite himself. She'll carve you into kindling. I'll hide behind roots, Bran said serene. Night deepened. The great hall bustled once more, though this time with purposeful calm. Quartermasters accounting crates, maesters doling medicinal satchels, scribes copying manifests. Jon slipped out early, exhaustion finally dragging him toward slumber. He had nearly reached his chamber when footsteps hurried behind. Jon! It was Sam, puffing, arms laden with ledgers. I compiled casualty figures. He opened the top book. 2,000 Northern, 800 Unsullied, 400 Dothraki, 300 Vale, 90 Knights of the Rose Company, 20 Free Folk, and... His voice faltered. Craster's wives, 7. Jon's throat tightened. Names? Here. Sam offered a sheaf. I wrote you a copy. Jon clasped the pages, the ink still fresh enough to smudge. He remembered burying the dead at Castle Black with Sam's help. Now the lists grew long as shaggy dog tails. He met Sam's eyes. Thank you.
Sam shifted awkwardly.
Will you tell her? Tell who what? Daenerys. About the vote.
Sam reddened.
Some men talk already wolves and banners. If worst comes. Jon raised a hand.
No counsels.
Not yet. Give her a chance to show mercy. Sam gnawed his lip but nodded. Gilly wants to stay north. The baby, well, boy now. She calls him Mance. She says the wall's ghosts keep him sleeping. He smiled lopsided. I'll ride south with you, though. Someone must chronicle. Jon clasped his friend's shoulder. Your quill weighs heavier than any sword.
Sam snorted.
Feels lighter but leaves deeper scars. He trudged away toward the library. Jon entered his chamber. The fire was lit. Ghost curled on the rug, rising with a greeting rumble, then settling again. The bed held fresh linens scented with lavender. Daenerys' touch, he knew. But the room was empty. She had not come. He wondered if she kept to her own bed intentionally, granting him space, or if distance had flowered like frost between them. He stripped his cloak, laid the casualty list on the table, and sank onto the mattress. Sleep claimed him quick as a thrown net. Dreams coiled. He walked a corridor of stone lit by green candles. Shadows moved ahead. Sansa with a crown of thorns, Arya blindfolded, Bran carved from weirwood wood, lips moving soundless. Daenerys stood at a window, dragon wings rising behind her. When she turned, her eyes were endless pits of fire. Snow drifted inside the hallway and melted on his cheeks like tears or ash. He ran toward her, but the floor cracked, a fissure glowing emerald wildfire, swallowing the world in roaring light. He woke gasping. Dawn scraped pale orange across the shutters. Ghost nudged him, whining. Jon swung his legs out, heart hammering. He breathed until calm settled, then washed face in chill water. The bandage on his thigh bled anew. Sparring reopened the wound. He packed it with fresh moss and bound tighter. Outside, horns blew. One long, two short, the muster call. Day 1 of 2 remained. Courtyard lines formed. Ser Brienne drilled northern recruits in shield lock. Grey Worm inspected unsullied spears, polish gleaming along obsidian heads. Regal swooped overhead, whipping cloaks into flurries. Drogon perched beyond the broken tower, wings folded, eyes half-lidded as though dreaming of burning worlds. Jon convened captains after midday meal to finalize route by ridge trail. The Riverlands would supply provisions. Message ravens flew. Edmure Tully replied by dusk. Riverrun stands ready, sellers stocked. The quill strokes shook hope or fear. A second raven arrived from the Eyrie, courtesy of young Lord Robin Arryn. He pledged 200 knights and Eyrie blessings, though half the words spelled wrong. Royce grunted approval. Arya suggested forging the boy a tin sword so he wouldn't choke on steel. Evening settled with thick clouds bruising the sky. A distant rumble of thunder answered Bran's warning. Jon oversaw waterproofing of wagons, pitch caulking along seams, canvas tarps lashed over sacks. He helped heave a barrel of salt cod when pain shot through his leg. Davos barked to fetch a litter, but Jon waved him off. "Let them see me struggle," he said. "They'll know a wound needn't halt duty." Later, he climbed the Maiden's Tower stair to Daenerys' chambers. 2 unsullied guards stood outside. They inclined heads, spears crossed then lifted. He knocked. Her voice bade him enter. The room glowed with lanterns scented of myrrh. Maps littered a side table, candles stubbed to nubs. She sat by the hearth, hair unbound, dragonbone comb in lap. Her gaze lifted.
Tên xiềng hung.
"I dreamt of emperors of ash," she said softly. "I dreamt of halls drowning in wildfire," he returned. "We share fire in our blood. Perhaps our dreams share smoke." She gestured to a second chair. He sat. For a while they listened to logs crack. Rafters creaked as thunder rolled outside. When the bells ring in King's Landing, she began, staring at the flames. "Do you believe Cersei will surrender?" "No," Jon said. "Nor do I believe the people inside those walls wish to die for her. And yet they may," she whispered, anguish flickering. "I want to spare them, but if she hides behind innocence, what choice do I have?"
Var det mansfjärsomme acts?
"You wore the black, you know?" Jon leaned forward. "Fearsome acts, yes, but we must draw lines we won't cross, or else we become the thing we fight." She turned, studying him in dim light. "You fear my flame. I fear what flame becomes when fanned by grief and anger." A bleak smile curved her lips. "Then stand beside me when I waver." "I will." He reached, taking her hand. The pulse beneath skin raced. She squeezed until his knuckles whitened. "Lie with me," she said, barely above breath. He nodded. They undressed slowly, uncertainly, as though each layer removed might strip away doubts. When they joined, it was not fierce but gentle, as if both feared hearts might shatter. After, they lay entwined, listening to rain drum the shutters. Sleep found them tangled like roots. Morning ridge. Storm had passed, leaving air scrubbed clean. Puddles mirrored ragged clouds. Jon woke before Daenerys, careful not to stir her. He dressed, leaving a kiss on her brow. In the corridor, Grey Worm awaited with scroll. Report from scouts along the ridge. Jon broke seal. Golden Company outriders sighted near Harrenhal. He cursed under breath, told Grey Worm to ready the queen. By the time sun crested walls, the council reconvened. Map markers shifted again. "The Golden Company lacks elephants after crossing seas," Tyrion said. "But 15,000 Sellswords remain formidable. They'll march north to join Cersei's host," Varys added, silk sleeves whispering. "If we trap them before they reach King's Landing, we have her strength." "A pincer," Grey Worm suggested. "Unsullied strike front. Northern men flank. Dragons burn their rear," Daenerys concluded. Jon interjected. "They travel under Harry Strickland's banner, a prudent Sellsword. He'll scatter into forests if dragons appear." Tyrion tapped his chin. "We lure them. Rumor of grain convoy traveling south. Something valuable enough to seize, but not perilous enough to caution." Sansa arched a brow. "You intend to bait a seasoned general with crumbs?" "Seasoned generals often hunger," Tyrion retorted. Jon considered. "Use wagons loaded with dragonglass mines hidden beneath tarps. When company strikes, dragons descend." "Civilians risked," Sansa warned. "Unmanned wagons," Jon corrected. "Horses turned loose before contact." Daenerys nodded. "I approve. We ride dawn as planned. Strickland will not see us coming through foothills." Preparations accelerated. Ghost sensed the energy, trotting alongside Jon wherever he went. Children lined ramparts, waving bits of cloth as contingents gathered in the courtyard. Unsullied files glinting, northern bannermen under patched sigils, Vale knights with white falcons, Stormlanders newly anointed by Gendry, free folk archers draped in wolf pelts. Drums beat, trumpets blared. Jon sought Arya near the stables. She tightened straps on a lithe gray mare. Needle hung at her hip, and the Valyrian dagger nested in boot. She saw him, smirked. "Don't die before I see King's Landing. I'll need your eyes inside its walls," he said. "Strickland's camp may not be the only ambush." She swung into saddle with cat grace. "I'll be where I'm needed." I softened. "Trust no one who shoves you from behind." He snorted. "Including sisters?" "Especially sisters." She winked and urged the mare toward the gate. Brienne rode past next, flanked by Podrick. The knight carried Oathkeeper across her back. "Honor holds," she said to Jon, voice resolute. He lifted Longclaw in salute. Davos passed, handing out lemon cakes baked for March. He pressed one into Jon's palm. "For strength," the smuggler said. Jon bit into sweet citrus, childhood warmth amid blood and strategy. Atop the battlement, Sansa watched the procession. She raised a hand. Jon returned gesture. No words, but the distance between them brimmed with vows. Horns sounded final call. Jon mounted, Ghost loping ahead. Daenerys ascended silver stallion beside him, cloak embroidered with three-headed dragon. Rhaegal wheeled above. Drogon's sword behind like an eclipse. Gates creaked open. The columns spilled onto the King's Road, banners snapping. Wind carried scents of thawing earth and pine sap. The army snaked southward, sunlight glinting off helms. Jon rode near front, flank to flank with Grey Worm and Tormund. Brienne's knights followed. Behind, endless wagons rumbled, grain disguised, dragonglass disguised deeper. Ridge Trail soon veered west into low hills budding with early wildflowers. Tracks bogged but held. Scouts ranged far ahead. Konos remaining Dothraki and 10 northern rangers. Reports trickled back. Quiet forests, abandoned farmsteads, crows circling but no banners. That night they camped beside a shallow stream. Fires dotted hillside like orange constellations. Jon walked perimeter with Davos, rain cloaks pulled tight. The old smuggler eyed the nearest dragonglass wagon. "Let's pray Sel's words bite." "If not," Jon said, "we still march." Dawn of day 2, mist pooled among trees. Columns stretched as far back as Jon could see. Banners muted gray behind gauze of fog. Mid-morning, a raven swooped to Daenerys's gauntlet. Bran's handwriting. Scouts glimpsed gold standard near Hollow Hill, half-day's ride ahead. Daenerys spurred Drogon skyward in response, ignoring Tyrion's plea. To wait, Jon cursed, ordered pace quickened. Drums rolled. Clouds shredded as dragons carved through sky, roars reverberating. By noon, they reached a ridge overlooking a broad valley. Jon dismounted, crawling to edge. Below, Golden Company bivouacked. Orderly rows of tents, pickets of armored men, horses tethered. At valley center, a line of wagons, grain disguised but clearly guarded. Strickland had taken the lure. Tyrion crouched beside Jon. Bells about to ring, it seems. Grey Worm signaled Unsullied to form phalanx out of sight behind the hill. Archers knocked. Jon felt the electric hum of oncoming clash. Daenerys circled high, waiting for sign. Jon raised spyglass. Strickland strode near the wagons, gesturing. At that moment, a horse spooked as a wagon axle snapped, tarps falling, exposing not grain but jagged obsidian crates rigged with pitch-soaked rope. Strickland recoiled, shouted. Jon dropped spyglass and slashed hand downward. Signal horns blared. Unsullied surged over crest, shields interlocked. Vale knights thundered from the opposite flank. Lances lowered. Dragons screamed. Drogon dove. Flame pouring like molten river along outer tents. Canvas erupted. Mercenaries scattered. Rhaegal followed, herding panicked horses into lines of pikes. Strickland rallied veterans. flung crossbow volleys skyward. Arrows sparked off Drogon's scales. Jon led northern spearmen down left slope, roaring invocations to the old gods and the new. Ghost bounded ahead, white streak through smoke. Steel met Sellsword pike lines. Crunch and clang melded into deafening roar. Jon drove Longclaw through gilded breastplate, yanked free in spray of blood. Memory of battle at the wall surged. He let instinct guide. A Sellsword captain lunged for him, boar-bladed axe sweeping. Jon parried, riposte severing arm at elbow. The man fell, shrieking. To the right, Brienne shattered a halberd shaft, Podrick skewering the enemy in same heartbeat. Flames roared anew as Drogon incinerated supply tent. Pitch barrels exploded, showering burning tar. Sellswords broke, fleeing north. Unsullied closed ranks, spears harvest reaping. But at valley far end, fresh cavalry banners appeared, Strickland's reserve. They charged, aiming to pierce unsullied back. Jon saw the threat. He whistled. Tormund led free folk to intercept, but numbers too few. Jon vaulted onto a stray horse, racing to flank. Arrows whistled past. A shaft nicked his arm. Pain flared. He urged mount faster, cutting through smoke until he reached the dragonglass wagons now abandoned. He slashed rope rigging, hauled torch from ground, and set fuse alight. Fire hissed along tar-soaked cord. He spurred away. Moments later, a shuddering boom shook valley as dragonglass crates detonated. Shards sprang like obsidian hail. Cavalry spooked, horses reared, men tumbled. Drogon angled wings and unleashed fire across chaos. Reserve melted into ruin. Within heartbeats, Golden Company standards toppled. Strickland rallied handful near central hillock, but Grey Worm's spear took him through throat, ending command. Mercenaries dropped weapons, raising hands. Jon raised horn to signal cease. Smoke drifted. Bodies carpeted field, burned, hacked, trampled. Unsullied, herded prisoners. Northern men scavenged arrows, bound wounded. Rains began again, steam rising from scorched ground. Jon limped among casualties. Blood-soaked bandage anew. He found Gendry binding a split scalp for a Stormlander youth. Arya crouched by a dying Sellsword, offering water. The man whispered last words before eyes clouded. She closed lids, face unreadable. Daenerys landed Drogon near Jon. She dismounted, boots splashing mud. Eyes gleamed triumphant but weary. "The path to King's Landing clears," she said. Jon nodded, but his gaze lingered on corpses blackened by dragonfire. That night campfires ringed the devastated valley. Rain slowed to drizzle. Jon conferred with captains. Losses minimal compared to enemy. March resumes morning. Prisoners assigned to dig graves and patch roads. He slipped away before moonrise, seeking quiet above streambed. Ghost followed, plopping down with sigh. Jon knelt, washing gore from hands. The water ran red, then pink, then clear. Footsteps approached, Tyrion, cloak dripping. "Victory seldom tastes as sweet as promised," the dwarf said. "Bitter as blood," Jon agreed. Tyrion produced a flask, offered it. Jon declined. Tyrion sipped. "She burned fewer than I feared. The fire killed mostly horses, tents. Intent, perhaps, or fortune." "Let me believe intent," Jon murmured. "Believe what you need, until proofs force surrender," Tyrion said softly. "And if proof one day demands more than sorrow, remember your roots." He patted Jon's knee, then tramped back through mud. Jon stared into water until dawn's first gray smeared the sky. Day 3. Column pushed south, pace relentless now. Hills flattened to wide plains dotted with crumbling watchtowers. Smoke columns marked villages huddled under Lannister banners. Many surrendered stores upon sight of dragons. Some fled. A few loosed crossbows, then fled faster. Daenerys spared those who yielded, posted guards to protect civilians from rogue Sellswords. Yet rumors spread. The Dragon Queen, who once torched slavers, now commanded an army of northern devils and foreign eunuchs. Peasants whispered prayers. Evening brought them to the Maiden Ford across Tumblestone River. Riverrun's towers rose beyond, banners of leaping trout waving. Edmure and his guard greeted them, cheeks rosy with excitement and fear. The castle welcomed them, cellars thrown open. Northern men filled bellies with stew. Unsullied stood watchful along parapets. Dragons roasted goats in courtyard pits. Jon sought hammock rest within gatehouse, but messengers roused him twice. First for tally of bread rations, second for report of Lannister scouts west. On the parapet he met Sansa's raven perched beside Bran's. Letter. The North endures. Ned Umber's holdfast rebuilding. Free folk children taught sowing seeds. At bottom Sansa wrote, "Remember who you are." He folded parchment, tucked against heart. At Riverrun's Godswood, smaller than Winterfell's, but fragrant with fresh blossom, Jon found Arya practicing forms under moonlight. Needle flickered like star shards. He sat on moss. "You move faster than wind." She sheathed blade. "Wind's lazy." She wiped sweat. "King's Landing close now." "Too close," Jon said. Arya studied him. "Your eyes carry storms again. Same storms before you died the first time." He huffed. "I don't intend to die this time." "Make sure she doesn't kill you," Arya said. "I've seen love become arrows through hearts." She touched her own chest where scars of faceless training hid.
Ilaila astopanya rowikan.
He pulled her into embrace, her head pressed below his chin, hair smelling of steel and horse. "Sisters guard brothers," he whispered. "Brothers guard sisters," she echoed, before slipping free and vanishing into trees. On the fourth dawn, they crossed red-gilded fields of wheat stubble, leaving Riverrun behind. Ghost scouted ahead, fur bristling at scents. Jon rode beside Daenerys at column head. Tyrion, Varys, and Missandei followed. Hills gave way to rolling grasslands trimmed by orchard rows. Ahead, smoke haze marked outskirts of King's Landing. Varys spoke low. Spies confirm Qyburn readied scorpions atop city walls. Euron's fleet patrols Blackwater Bay. "Dragons fly high, strike true," Daenerys said. "Scorpions now mount repeat torsion engines," Tyrion warned. "One lucky bolt grounds a dragon forever." Jon suggested a night strike disabling ballista crews. Arya volunteered infiltration. Daenerys considered then agreed. Stealth first, fire if stealth fails. Plan set. That evening Arya, Gendry, and 20 faceless trained assassins from Bravos, contracted by Varys' coin, would slip through Rat Gate with fishermen returning after dusk. The army encamped in a crescent outside sight of walls, in Old Olive Grove. Banners masked, fires minimal. Dragons roost in ravine nearby, unseen. Scouts monitored roads. Tyrell refugees spilled from east, whispering famine. Jon paced perimeter. Anxiety gnawed. He missed Bran's calm counsel, Sansa's wry glances. But path led forward. Near midnight, Arya's team departed by river skiff. Jon clasped her forearm. She smiled thin. "Keep your wolf leashed. I'll come back." She melted into shadows. Hours stretched. Wind carried faint booming of surf. Jon sat on log, sharpening Longclaw by lantern glow. Daenerys joined, silent, watching steel sparking. In dim light, her face looked carved from candle wax. She reached, stilling his hand. "We will win," she said. "I fear what victory costs," he replied. "So do I." She rested head on his shoulder. Together they watched east where stars faded. Before dawn, riders galloped in. Arya atop sweat-lathered horse, cloak singed. She dismounted, breath fogging. "Scorpions burned," she reported. "But alarms raised. City knows dragons near." She pulled a bloody cloth from pocket, eye patch bearing Kraken sigil. "Euron in harbor," she added, "ready to sail upriver and flank."
Jon met Daenerys.
She closed eyes, inhale, exhale, then opened ablaze with purpose. "We strike at first light. We break the wheel now." Battle lines formed across dry meadow while dawn's rim glowed crimson. Unsullied advanced shields locked. Northern archers knocked flaming arrows. Vale knights positioned for cavalry sweep along Rose Road. Dragons rose with thunderous wing beats, silhouettes against blood-red sky. Jon mounted, Ghost beside. He surveyed his army, faces lined with soot and resolve, banners stirring like restless spirits. He raised Longclaw, voices roared back. And somewhere beyond city walls, a bell tower awaited tolls of surrender or doom. Jon breathed deep, the scent of wet grass, horse sweat, distant sea salt. The world balanced on an hour's blade. He spurred forward. Beneath the walls, the first arrow flew. To be continued. First light crawled over the fields south of the Blackwater like a reluctant confession, turning dew-cloaked grass into blades of dull glass. Though dawn painted the sky in soft pastels, nothing gentle lingered on the plain. Rank upon rank stood under muted banners. Ragged northern direwolves stitched from mismatched pelts. Lavender veil falcons drooping on rain-soaked silk. The rigid black of unsullied shields, each one a mirror to the past night's slaughter.
No drums rolled, no horns blared.
Only the hush before reality shattered. Jon sat astride a mottled gray gelding near the vanguard, ghost pressed like a pale shadow against the horse's offside. Wind teased the wolf's hackles. The beast's muzzle was streaked in dried mud that masked a still pink scar beneath his left eye. Ahead stretched a gentle rise where rocky outcrops jutted like broken teeth. Beyond that crest lay the Dragon's Road, the open pastures, and no more than 3 leagues farther, the walls of King's Landing, 500 years of quarried pride squatting on its peninsula of blood and salt. Smoke already smudged the horizon, a reminder that Arya's night raid had torched the scorpion nests atop the southern battlements. Yet distant bells still lay mute, just as silent as the hundreds of thousands who huddled inside their city, praying to every god for dawn to pass it by. Daenerys hovered overhead, Drogon's wings beating gusts that rattled the pennants. She had painted her cheeks with ash, and a fingertip of crimson pigment traced from the inner corner of each eye toward her temples, a war mark the Dothraki called the Blood Comet. Her silver blonde braid fell like a sword down her back, whipping against scale in the wind. Regal soared farther east, scouting the curve of the Blackwater. Every few heartbeats his cry echoed across the plain, a high, reedy call that vibrated in the chest more than in the ear. Tyrion climbed the slope beside Jon on a shaggy garron that looked ready to collapse under its mismatched tack. Mud clung to the dwarf's boots, and his red-rimmed eyes flicked between Jon and the queen above as though he alone could measure the tension that bound them. "Still time to call parley," Tyrion muttered, wiping dew from his beard. "I can ride to the gate with white cloth and a tongue full of honey. Cersei would sooner feast on that tongue than surrender," Jon answered, and he felt a sting of regret at the certainty in his voice. He thought of Bran's river of visions, the infinite branching where each choice birthed a new world. Somewhere, perhaps, one of those branches showed a Lannister queen opening the gates to spare her people. He almost smiled at the absurdity. Tyrion produced a small brass whistle from a leather pouch. A field signal the Queen's Guard once used for covert withdrawal. If you see her dragon banking west, you blow this and we pull the line behind the first ridge. Might save 1,000 souls, maybe 2. Jon accepted the whistle. It was cold against his palm, etched with a crowned lion so worn it resembled more a dog than a predator. If it comes to retreat, it comes to catastrophe. "Disaster begins in inches," Tyrion said, reins twitching as his horse shied. "As does victory. Hard to know which path we tread until the ground opens underfoot." A scurry of boots interrupted them. Arya appeared, moving with uncanny silence despite the soft clank of 2 short steel picks strapped across her back. "City patrol rides this way," she said, breathing only slightly faster than normal. 200 strong, banners of the gold cloaks. They've seen the dragons, but not the army behind the berm. They'll crest that rise inside half a bell. Jon studied the terrain. They expect a reconnaissance flight, not a host. Can we scare them back without blood? Arya's face tilted, the barest shrug. When they see unsullied shields, they'll break. But running men shout. Shouting men panic. She drew the dagger that had felled the Night King, the blade glinting cruel black under the nacre chill of morning. A panic in the city might ring the bells. Tyrion seized on the thought. Bells are our sword of Damocles. Let them toll surrender before we're forced to answer steel for steel. Jon signaled a nearby Stark sergeant. Thin, freckled, barely of age. Take 20 riders. Show yourselves, scatter them, but take no heads. He leaned down until their eyes met.
Notre fils, Sir Geoffrey.
We are here to end wars, not feed them. The boy swallowed, then saluted with fist to heart. Hooves thundered off into the mist. Jon exhaled, feeling the edges where choices scraped bone. 2 dawns prior, he had salted the valley with dragonglass and watched Sel's words die screaming in blue fire. The memory clung, bitter as tannin. How many more had to burn? He looked skyward. Drogon still circled. The queen's posture in the saddle remained upright, calm, almost regal. But when the dragon wheeled and the sun caught her profile, he glimpsed the tremor in her chin. Fear or fury or both. He spurred forward, ghost padding behind. Snow squelched where pockets of spring thaw had turned the ground to mire. In a shallow hollow behind the berm, unsullied phalanxes waited in silent rows, spear points gleaming. Grey Worm wore no helm now. He stood bareheaded at their forefront, a red cloth tied around his upper arm, a badge of vengeance rather than valor. His dark eyes hardened when Jon approached. "We await the Queen's breath," Grey Worm said. It sounded half promise, half prayer. "The Gold Cloaks patrol this way," Jon announced. "Hold position. If they flee, allow them passage. Bloodless flight benefits the living." Grey Worm inclined his head, expression unreadable. Jon wished for a gesture of fraternity, something beyond a soldier's acknowledgement. But Grey Worm was a blade forged in slavery, tempered in liberation. Mercy, to him, came in rigid forms and only rarely. Hooves thundered down the Dragon's Road. Jon crested the berm in time to see Ser Geoffrey's riders form crescent across the patrol's path. The gold cloaks skidded to a halt, horses balking. For a heartbeat, the 2 groups stared across a thin strip of churned mud. Then the stark wave parted and the city patrol glimpsed the massed ranks behind. They spun and galloped back toward the gates, dust pluming. Tyrion exhaled behind him. Bells soon or arrows. Odds are even. Jon brought the whistle to his lips, but did not blow. Instead, he felt for the hilt of Longclaw. The wolf's head pommel sat cold, patient. Below, the Unsullied lifted their shields into the dawn. A sudden silence rippled across field and sky. Wind fell flat. Birds ceased cawing. Jon's mount stamped uneasily. Then a deep tremor vibrated the earth. No impact, just resonance, like the first bow stroke across a gut string. He realized a moment later it was Drogon's roar. The dragon hovered above the city now, a dark silhouette against sunrise. The roar came again, washing over walls and fields alike. Jon's heart surged. The queen had given them time, one final demand that Cersei choose surrender. Moments passed. Then it came. The high, dissonant clang of a single bell, echoing from the tallest sept tower. Once, twice, a third time, Jon closed his eyes. Relief spooled through his chest. He turned, ready to order the host to stand easy. But Drogon did not veer away. Instead, the dragon arced higher, talons flexing. Regal banked from the east, reflecting sun off jade scales. And in that instant, Jon felt something fracture in the air, a fault line between plea and command. Flames licked from Drogon's throat, thin, blue-edged, then vanished. No breath released. He hovered like an arrow held at full draw. On the ground, Grey Worm lifted his spear and barked a word in Valyrian. Shields locked. Unsullied began to advance. Jon's blood chilled. He heeled the gelding, charging downslope toward Grey Worm, bellowing, "Stand!" The bells ring, but the clamor of marching feet swallowed his voice. Clouds of dust billowed as northern infantry moved, following the Unsullied without waiting for banners. He saw Ser Geoffrey's small troop trying to wheel aside, uncertain but swept up. He spotted Tyrion frantically waving at Drogon with a bright crimson cloth, his shout swallowed by the gale of wings. Drogon's head snapped south, fixating on the Scorpion Towers still smoldering from Arya's fires. Jon tracked the queen's silhouette, saw her lean forward, the sinuous neck bowed. A torrent of orange-white flame erupted, splashing across the southern battlements. Stone glowed, mortar crackled, and the massive gatehouse melted like tallow. The first screams drifted across the plain. Grey Worm ran, not toward the breach but toward a solitary shape. A Lannister herald riding out, banner of parley raised. Jon spurred after. He saw spear thrust and the herald's body tumble, throat spilling bright arterial arcs onto frost-nipped grass. Rage spiked. Jon slid from his saddle, still moving, boots skating across mud, intercepting Grey Worm. "Stop!" he roared. The unsullied commander's eyes burned. "You stop!" he hissed. "Cersei's men killed Missandei. Today debt is paid." "No," Jon growled, grabbing the spear shaft. "We came to free them, not burn them." Grey Worm twisted, slid the haft free, and hammered the butt into Jon's wounded thigh. Pain exploded white. Jon went to one knee. Ghost snarled, fangs inches from Grey Worm's calf. Unsullied shields closed in a semicircle. But Grey Worm barked order, Rice. Angie his spear to halt them. "Hold," he said. "The wolf belongs to the king." He spat the last word like acid. Jon rose shaking, limbs quaking with fury and disbelief. Behind him the host surged toward the gate, many shouting vengeance, others confusion. Smoke funneled skyward, a deafening crack. Regal slammed into the western tower, claws rending limestone. Rubble rained. Jon glimpsed archers inside, burning alive before they could loose a bolt. He lost sight of Tyrion. He dashed back for his horse, scrambled into saddle, and kneed the gelding into a brutal gallop parallel to the main assault. Ghost loped beside until walls loomed. Fire washed the ramparts. Civilians poured onto the streets in frantic streams, faces pale, carrying children or sacks of meager possessions. Some fled toward the river gate only to be cut off by dragon flame. Where mercenaries tried to hold lines, unsullied spears punched mercilessly. In a narrow alley choked with smoke, Jon dismounted, tying reins loosely. He waded forward, voice hoarse. "Flee North Gate! Get to the gate!" He and a handful of Stark guards ushered townsfolk through a breach into a walled herb garden. But panicked cries multiplied. Overhead, timbers groaned. A sphere of green fire burst from a warehouse farther on, Wildfire Cache. The concussion flung Jon against a cart, broke glass panes, hurled bodies into air like dolls. He crawled to his knees, ears ringing, taste of copper on tongue. Ghost whined, muzzle licked with blood that was not his own. Flames licked roof eaves. Sparks drifted like hellish snow. Jon pressed deeper toward the Red Keep, determined to reach Daenerys. Every street turned into a battle or a massacre or both. Northern men hacked fleeing gold cloaks who had thrown down arms. Most obeyed orders to stand down, but a few axes rose in bloodlust. Jon screamed at them to desist, some shamed, some too lost. He broke into a courtyard by the September of the Hand and found Arya there, cloak smoldering, face streaked black. "The queen's gone mad," she spat between ragged breaths. "She hunts every tower, every bolt hole. She still trusts me," Jon said, though the words felt brittle. "I'll stop this." Arya's gaze flicked to the wildfire scar across his cheek. "Don't hesitate." She pressed something into his fist, a small file stopper sealed in wax. Maester Wolkan called it Flame Bane. Break glass, hurl, and the fire drowns itself. One chance. Jon tucked it into belt. Smoke thickened, choking. Through the haze he saw Regal angle toward the harbor, Euron's fleet. Mastheads cracked. Masts toppled as the Green Dragon's fire licked sails like parchment. Ships exploded one after another. Tar-soaked rigging sent black pillars into sky. Jon pushed onward. Past the Street of Sisters he found Grey Worm again at the second ring. His spear tip lodged in the breast of a kneeling Lannister youth no older than Bran when he still climbed towers. Jon gagged. "Enough!" He shoved Grey Worm aside, felt unsullied eyes swivel like shutters. "Fall back. The city yields." Grey Worm's jaw clenched steel. The city bleeds first. Rage flared. Jon drew Longclaw. The commander turned, raising spear. For a heartbeat, unsheathed possibility hovered, brotherhood shattered by vengeance. But another explosion rocked the quarter. Paving stones cracked. A building collapsed, sending Talus dust. Grey Worm stepped back into his ranks. The Unsullied advanced, leaving Jon behind. He swore and ran for the Red Keep. Streets became labyrinths of flame. He skirted collapsed vaults, waded through knee-deep water from burst aqueducts. He carried a child once, thrust into his arms by a weeping mother struck by falling rubble. The child had ceased breathing by the time he reached the healer carts. He did not know if she had been dead before or after. The great staircase leading to Maegor's holdfast roared like a chimney. Drogon perched on a parapet at its summit, tail coiling through shattered crenellations. Daenerys stood upon the dragon's neck, hair whipping, gaze roaming distant streets. She resembled a spiteful goddess hewn from obsidian, flame gilding armor edges. Around the base of the staircase, charred corpses littered like discarded dolls. Jon called her name. She did not hear. He climbed, boots slipping on ash-slick marble, coughing. Ghost tried to follow, but heat drove him back. The dire wolf retreated to a marble alcove, snarling at dragon silhouette. Jon reached third landing. Drogon's eye, massive and molten gold, fixed on him. A low growl vibrated stone. Jon held gaze, sheathing sword. "I need her," he whispered. The dragon's pupils narrowed, heat gusting. But after a breath, the jaw relaxed. Permission or warning, he could not tell. He ascended last steps and found her alone. No guards, only wind tugging at cloak tatters. "Daenerys," he began, voice ragged. She turned slowly. Soot streaked her face like war paint, tears carving pale rivulets through black grime. "Listen," he said. The bells rang. They surrendered. Her voice cracked. "Did they?" She gestured to Burning City. "I see no surrender. Only those who cheered my brother's murder and my father's death. They loved their chains." Jon closed distance, skirted pools of molten lead that dripped from Dragonfar-softened crenels. Chains break when tyrants fall, not when innocents burn. You gave them a chance to see a better queen. Show them now. She shook her head, pupils dilated. "They'll never love me. Let them fear me. Fear is a truer leash." Pain twisted deep. He reached, cupped her hand. "I love you," he said, and felt truth ache like reopened scar. "Let fear die here. Rule with mercy." Her lip trembled. For a heartbeat, he saw the Khaleesi who freed Meereen, who wept for slave children crucified. Then memory fled her eyes, replaced by horrified resolve. Mercy for them is cruelty for those unborn under their whip. "I end the wheel today." She pulled hand away, turned. Drogon shifted, wings mantling. Jon's fingers brushed the file at his belt. Arya's flamebane. He hesitated. If he hurled at Drogon's chest, it might douse fire long enough. But what then? Soldiers and scorpions had failed. Only Queen's word could halt carnage. Another eruption sounded near Flea Bottom, wildfire's green pillars piercing smoke. He saw figures caught in backdraft leap from rooftops into nothing. Horror surged, drowning hesitation. "Daenerys!" He drew Longclaw, point down, an oath more than threat. "I can't let this continue." She faced him, sorrow and fury twisting features. "You would raise steel to your queen? I would lower it to my people." His throat tightened. "Choose me. Choose life." Her hand rose, whether to touch or command he would never know. Drogon hissed, pupils slitting to daggers. Jon's heart hammered. He took a step. She matched step back. Tears streamed down cheeks though ash disguised them. Their breaths mingled, tasting of smoke and heartbreak. Then a sound split air. The wail of a single horn echoing from the outer wall. The old Targaryen three-note salute. Jon jerked his head. On a distant rampart, Tyrion waved the red cloth again. But this time he stood beside something else. Regal hovered behind him, wings flared, yet its mouth was closed. Instead, green dragonfire poured from the ruptured bowels of Euron's last flagship moored far below. The horn blared again. Drogon's gaze snapped to his brother. A tremor passed through the black dragon's frame. Jon seized moment. He lifted Flamebane, smashed vial against parapet. A smoky mist billowed, instantly leaching heat from the stone. Frost filmed molten channels, hissing. Drogon recoiled, wings flapping. Daenerys staggered, eyes wide. Jon surged, wrapping arms around her, forcing her back from the edge. "Look!" he shouted over wind and dragon scream. He pointed toward the city's heart. In that direction, bells still tolled, many now, not one. Citizens had seized lines to ring surrender anew. A chorus of bronze echoed sorrow and plea. Through distant haze, Jon glimpsed Grey Worm's phalanx pausing at the gate of the fish market district. Smoke parted to reveal children kneeling, hands raised, before unsullied spears. Something faltered in those ranks. Breaths held. Daenerys shuddered. Her knees buckled. He steadied her. "Hear them," he urged between gasps. "Hear their surrender." Her sob cut the air. She pressed palms to her ears as if to block bells, but they rang through bone. Drogon moaned, uncertain. Tyrion's figure on the wall lifted both arms, palms up, a plea and a testament. Unsullied, behind him lowered spears. Grey Worm still gripped shaft white-knuckled. But he looked back across plain where the queen stood high upon the Red Keep. Even from leagues away, Jon felt that thread of command, frayed yet not severed. He awaited her judgment. Daenerys drew a long, shaking breath. She spread arms, an echo of emancipation she once offered to 1,000,000 souls across the narrow sea. Drogon settled, folding wings. The furnace roar that shook keep stones subsided into a rumble. Flames still consumed houses, but tide ebbed rather than rose. For a span of heartbeats, the world balanced again on decision's edge. She turned to Jon, eyes hollow. "Mercy," she whispered hoarsely, "but mercy may cost our crown." "We never wore it for gold," he said. He slipped blood-streaked fingers into hers. "We wore it for dawn." Tears blurred his vision. "Let dawn come." Distant horns signaled cease advance. Shields lowered. The thunder of boots stilled. Daenerys sagged. Jon gathered her into arms, burying face in silver hair smelling of smoke and lilac. Drogon crooned, curling neck around them in living curtain. For the first time since the bells had tolled, true silence fell over that pocket of sky. It did not last. From somewhere inside Flea Bottom, a new roar rose. Crowd panic or jubilation Jon could not discern. Wildfire still burned. Somewhere, Sel's words still fought. Hatred did not end with a word, but the tide reversed. He looked down the staircase. Unsullied pulled wounded from rubble now. Northern men herded Lannister survivors into lines for medical aid rather than execution. Ghost limped up the steps, muzzle seared, but tail wagging slow relief. Jon knelt to press forehead to the direwolves before rising. Daenerys' voice, soft yet strong. "We secure water lines, douse fires. Tyrion will collect prisoners." She steadied herself, shoulders squaring. "And you, Aegon Targaryen," he flinched at the name, "will help me show them a queen who heals." He nodded, but inside, his heart battled equal storms. Grief for those already lost in the first wave. Fear that mercy might yet fracture as surely as rage. Hope stubborn as the first crocus-piercing winter ground. Together they descended the broken staircase. Around them the Red Keep smoldered, but above, the sun-breached pall of smoke, breaking through in molten shafts that gilded every shattered stone. Hours later, midday found Jon knee-deep in bucket brigades passing water to smother hotspots. Beside him, Grey Worm labored without rest, his silence holding apology and iron. When their shoulders brushed, neither flinched. Tyrion limped between triage tents, scribbling lists with a trembling quill. Davos commandeered a baker's wagon to ferry charred but edible loaves to the displaced. Gendry hammered bent shields into cooking griddles for soup cauldrons. Arya vanished among rooftops, tracking rogue Sel's words, still looting. Afternoon. Bran's ravens arrived in flights, circling, settling on parapets where corpses had lain an hour prior. Jon felt their gaze, wordless yet thick with witness. He prayed Bran's eyes saw the water buckets, the field surgeons, not the earlier flames. Twilight. Rain cloud fronts rolled inland from the bay, cooled by Regal's earlier wing beats. Fat drops hissed on embers. Steam veiled the ruined streets, erasing some of the day's horrors. Night. Sansa arrived with second host, the slow levies from White Harbor and Carhold who had followed once roads cleared. She rode a gray mare, hair braided tight under wolf fur hood. Atop the battered mud gate she met Jon. Their embrace carried no words. She surveyed smoldering city lights, lips pulling thin. "This is mercy?" she asked. "It is what mercy wrestled back from madness," he answered. She touched his cheek where wildfire burn blistered. "Then hold it fast." 2 days passed in frantic calm. Bucket chains, ration lines, field tribunals. Daenerys commandeered granaries for public kitchens. Those who smelled smoke still queued for bread, suspicion warring with hunger. Grey worms unsullied patrolled but now carried waterskins alongside spears. Regal circled perimeter, dissuading looters, while Drogon slept coiled around the broken maiden vault, one eye half open. The third dawn, Jon crossed the charred plaza before the September of Baelor's ruins and found Arya perched on the broken foot of a toppled statue. She tossed a coin engraved with a many-faced god into the air, catching it between scarred fingers. "The people whisper a new name for you," she said without looking up. "The Wolf of Mercy. They saw you pull children from flames." "Names blow like smoke," he replied, stopping at the statue's base. "Where will you go when rebuilding begins?" She palmed the coin. "North or nowhere. West maybe, where maps stop." She slid down, lithe as ever. "But first I'll watch what crown you decide to wear." "I decide nothing alone," Jon said. He looked toward the red keep where scaffolds already crawled. "Choices belong to them now, lords, small folk, freedmen. Not kings born in shadow." She smirked. "Try telling that to your dragon sister." Her tone carried mischief and worry entwined. At midday, a council convened in the Hall of the Darkland Kings, the only chamber intact enough. Lords of remaining houses gathered. Sansa for the north, Edmure for the Riverlands, Gendry for the Stormlands, Jon Royce representing the Vale, Lord Tarly for the Reach, the Martell envoy for Dorne, plus Tyrion and Varys. Grey Worm refused seat but stood behind Daenerys. Jon sat on no throne, only a plain bench at her side.
Arguments flaret. Reparations, greng tarifs, war gilt.
Edmure pushed for harsh levies on crownlands to rebuild. Lord Tarly countered. Gendry pledged coin and men to reconstruct the Gate of the Gods. Sansa demanded independent North remain inviolate. All the while Daenerys listened, fingers steepled, eyes weary. When voices fell hoarse, she spoke. "I will not rule ashes, nor will I punish those who knelt without arms." She turned to Sansa. "The North may choose its own path. The 7 kingdoms may become 6. Gasps rippled. Sansa blinked, caught off guard. But she inclined head slowly. Daenerys continued. "Yet I cannot rule if my presence breeds fear. I ask the council, is there faith enough in me to guide a wounded realm? Or shall I pass the crown to one of clearer heart?" Silence thickened. Tyrion rose. "Your mistakes cost lives, yet so did mine when I served past kings. A ruler judged only by first failings would find every throne empty. I trust your grace." He bowed. Gendry followed. "Storm's End stands with the Dragon Queen." Lord Tarly hesitated, then nodded grudgingly. Martell envoy remained neutral but non-hostile. Sansa's gaze flicked to Jon. He met her eyes, bleached with exhaustion. She rose. "The North stands apart. But I know the realm needs healing, and I recall a queen who ended slavery. If that queen returns, I will not raise sword against her." Daenerys exhaled. A tear traced soot corridor across her cheek. Grey Worm tensed. Jon suspected his heart still weighed blood. But for now, peace scribbled tentative line across parchment. Outside, the city breathed labored but alive. Smoke thinned under onshore breeze. Bells hung silent, scraped raw by clappers. Yet their absence now felt like mercy's hush rather than dread's. Near dusk, Jon found Bran's raven perched on balcony rail. A parchment tied to leg bore only 8 words. Threads mend slow. Hold the loom with steady hands. He smiled tiredly. Daenerys approached, cloak furled close. We face 1,000 wave crest storms. Her voice quavered. So we brace the mast together, he replied. She laid her head on his shoulder. For a moment no words passed. Below, in the courtyard, children laughed, chasing stray goats freed from a burnt wagon. Their laughter bubbled fragile, bright. Jon closed his eyes, tasted ash and salt and lilac. The last rays of sun gilded rooftops where blackened slate met sky of bruised gold. Somewhere a distant hammer beat rhythm. Smiths already forging new hinges for gates. Life, stubborn as weeds through flagstone, began again. He did not know what crowns the morrow might demand, nor what ghosts would haunt their nights. But he knew dawn had come, and when he opened his eyes, light caught on the melted stones of the Red Keep and made them glow, as if the castle itself dared to hope. Night settled soft. Ghost limped at Jon's side as they walked the ramparts, the direwolf's eyes reflecting torchlight. Below, rivers of lanterns wound through charred streets, marking healing stations, soup cauldrons, communal shelters. The hush of rebuilding replaced the roar of conquest. In the sky above, Drogon and Regal crossed flight paths, dark shapes against new stars, silent now save for the whisper of wings. A lullaby over a city learning to breathe again. Far north, beyond horizon, a weirwood's face lifted Sapscar tears to the moon, and ravens took wing to carry stories across the world. Stories of fire and snow and the narrow space where mercy may yet flower amid ruin. The rain that followed the sack of King's Landing was gentle at first, a nigh invisible mist that drifted through streets stripped of roof tiles and splintered wagons. Yet even that hint of moisture seemed a miracle to the people who had survived Dragonflame and Falling Stone. They emerged from cellars and quayside warehouses clutching bowls, cracked goblets, kitskin gloves. Anything that might gather the droplets beating on soot-black beams. Small children stuck out their tongues. The old and maimed knelt openly, heads tipped skyward, letting the cold water wash ash from their faces, mingle with tears, and run down necks as a benediction. For 3 days Jon Snow worked shoulder to shoulder with them, accepting no title, insisting on no deference. He hauled rubble from the dog market piers, lashed tourniquets for armless carpenters, and lifted a weeping newborn, still slick with blood, out of a makeshift birthing tent erected beneath the ragged shadow of the Red Keep. When he carried that infant, wrapped in a linen scrap ripped from his own undershirt, the mother had whispered a name through split lips: Hope. Jon had wanted to refuse the weight of symbol she pressed upon the child, yet the name clung to him all the same. On the evening of the 4th day, the steady drizzle strengthened into honest rain. Sheets of water pounded down, scouring alleys that stank of char and decay, sluicing green wildfire residue from gutters, and turning the plazas into slick ponds where cinders swirled like dead insects. Trains of unsullied filed through those temporary lakes, shields raised above their helms not as defense but as makeshift gutters to channel water toward fires still gnawing the upholstery warehouses of the Street of Sisters. Northern men formed bucket lines alongside them. Stormlanders followed, their bright yellow cloaks soaked heavy and plastered to my L. One by one the pockets of flame choked and died in hissing clouds of steam. Night cloaked the charred city in darkness deeper than any Jon had known beyond the wall. The great torches of the gold cloaks had run out of oil. Lanterns had smashed during the siege. Dragonfire had eaten candle stores. Only the scatter of watchfires kept pockets of refugees from stumbling blind. In that moonless hush the moans of the wounded seemed louder, the crack of splitting timbers sharper, the quiet prayers uttered in half-burned septs somehow more piercing. Jon sat on a toppled lintel beside Grey Worm, the 2 men passing a skin of watered wine between them. Neither spoke for a long while. There were no more arguments in them, only exhaustion, only the mutual recognition that both had walked closer to madness than they ever wished again. When Grey Worm finally broke the silence, his voice was hoarse enough to crack. In Noth they sing of soft nights where the sea brings peace. She spoke of it often. He did not say Missandei's name. He did not need to. I thought vengeance would hush her absence. Jon stared into the puddle at their feet. A distorted reflection looked back, the warped ghost of a man caught between wolf and dragon. Vengeance never hushes, he murmured. It whispers louder the more we feed it. He handed back the skin, then rose stiffly. Sleep if you can. Tomorrow the city buries its dead together. Lannister and Stark, Unsullied and Smallfolk. We lay them in the dragon pit under one sky. After that dawn, we begin again. Grey Worm did not reply, but his grip tightened on the wineskin. When Jon touched his shoulder, only briefly, the commander did not flinch. The council to draft a charter of mercy gathered in the remnants of Maegor's holdfast. It should have been impossible. A meeting of lords and ladies, freedmen and Sellsword captains, crabbers from Cracklaw, faceless priests from Bravos, and even a gaggle of apprentice pyromancers, all seated around a horseshoe of refurbished trestle tables. But the impossible had become the currency of survival. Tyrion Lannister, quill in hand, served as scribe. Varys perched nearby, bald head gleaming in torchlight, offering terse suggestions whenever debate drifted toward recrimination. Daenerys took the central chair, its legs shored with iron braces hammered on the spot by Gendry Baratheon. She wore no crown, only a plain wool-jerkin-dyed smoke gray. The red comet streak pulled across her cheeks had faded to a faint memory beneath repeated washings, but hints of the pigment still clung along the ridge of her jaw. Beside her sat Jon, his doublet patched at the shoulder where dragon glass had torn through days before. He had tried to refuse any place of prominence. Tyrion insisted the two rulers share equal footing until the realm decided. The first motion came from Sansa. "Winter is broken," she said, voice low but steady. "The North declares for peace on one condition. The realm recognize our right to choose our liege, or choose none at all without swordpoint influence." She paused, letting eyes sweep the mixed assembly. "We fed the realm grain when the wall fell. We bled for it at the Battle of Ice Dawn. We will stand against it again if forced, but we prefer friendship." Lord Tarly, pale, shaken, still smelling faintly of the ash rain that had fallen on the Reach, cleared his throat. "The Reach elects to reserve judgment until harvest. Our fields are charred along the Rose Road, and Old Town's fleets are lost. We require assistance in seed stores or face famine." "Seed will come," Daenerys promised. "The coffers of Casterly Rock have no lord but creditors. We levy 10% of Lannister gold to feed the realm." Edmure Tully brightened. "A generous start. The Riverlands can spare black barley and oats once we resow along the Tumblestone. We'll need plowshares, though." The forges at Harrenhal collapsed. Gendry lifted a finger. "Storm's End has or to spare and smiths. I'll ship 3 barge loads of raw pig iron by month's turn." Debate ebbed and flowed. Reopening the Rose Road, rehanging the bells of the Great September with melted scorpion frames, repurposing half-built siege engines into drawbridge cranes, naming rights to charnel pits, the length of mourning garb, whether the faith militant could resume patrols or should relinquish swords for a year of penance. Through it all, Jon listened more than spoke. His words, when they came, were short. "We spare what we can," or "Fear feeds the next war." Whenever voices rose, he would rest a hand on Daenerys' elbow. She in turn would breathe once, twice, then quell the room with a lifted palm. Near dawn the charter took shape. Ink on vellum, each clause read aloud, each ratified with scrawl or thumbprint. Tyrion dipped his last cool nub, blew gently. "So ends Part 1, Relief," Varys clucked. "Part 2 begins with Governance." A hush fell. The hall's fire cast uneasy shadows across faces painted by torch soot and exhaustion. Jon felt every eye slide between him and the Dragon Queen. This was the moment they had all prayed to postpone, yet none could avoid. Who would rule? Alone? Together? Not at all? Daenerys folded her hands. "I reclaimed this city by fire, but I do not mistake that fire for right. If Westeros wishes a queen, then let her ascend by the will of its people. not by my dragons or my pain." She turned, pale hair swinging. "Jon!" He stiffened. He had feared she would name him king without consent. He feared else she would deny his claim entirely, branding him a threat. Instead, she reached for his hand beneath the table. Fingers woven through his, she looked to Sansa, then to the others, and spoke a single sentence. "Aegon Targaryen is heir of houses Stark and Targaryen. I propose we reign in council, both of us, until order finds root, then submit ourselves to the great council of lords once crimes are forgiven and roads restored." Gasps fluttered like sparrows. Lord Royce muttered, "A precedent unseen since the Dawn Age." Others whispered, but Jon found his own answer in Grey Worm's gaze, in Arya's nod, in Sansa's measured smile. Brienne's lips formed a soft amen. He rose. "I never sought a crown. I swore to guard the realms. If the realm deems me worthy, I will serve beside her, not above, not below. Equal blades to break, no more wheels but to mend spokes." He met Daenerys' eyes, sharing the weight. "Yet if the realm spurns me, I pledge my sword to her still. Mercy must have a shield." That pledge settled like snowfall. Tyrion's quill scratched once. So recorded. A vote was called. Quiet, almost fearful. Sansa voted yes, beneath stipulation that the North's self-determination be sealed in ink. Gendry voted yes. The Martell envoy abstained, citing the need for Dorne's counsel. Lord Tarly, after a moment, voted yes when Daenerys promised leniency for Tyrell bastards shrouded by mana debt. Jon Royce voted yes with a nod to Elaine Stone, Sansa's secret alias no longer secret. Arya did not vote. Faceless have no houses, yet she put 2 fingers to her temple as though swearing silent fealty. The Charter of Mercy was sealed. Reconstruction began in earnest. Weeks passed. Snowmelt in the north fed rivers that drove new barges of timber down to rebuild the base of the Dragon Pit. Each dawn the city woke to a symphony of hammers. Market squares once filled with refugees sprouted canvas canteens painted with handprints. Crimson for Storm's End, pale blue for Winterfell, sea green for Sunspear. The air smelled of fresh split lumber, horse manure, the faint tang of lime mortar. Jon rose before sun each morning, wolf at his heels, to circle the wards. Children greeted Ghost with laughter now instead of startled screams. They no longer saw a dragon's ally or monster, but the silent guardian who had sniffed rubble to rescue dozens. One gray dawn Jon passed the remnants of the Street of Steel and found Gendry forging spindle nails for roof trusses. Sparks spattered. Gendry paused only long enough to swipe sweat with sooty wrist. "Nails first," he shouted over the ring of iron. "Then hinges, then door bands. Can't rebuild a kingdom without doors." Downriver, Arya supervised the dredging of the Blackwater, her keen eyes spotting barrels of archers' arrows submerged in muck. She had recruited small gangs of ragged orphans, paying each rescued barrel with a meal chit at the soup tents. Jon watched her toss a chipped pottery shard to a boy not half his sister's age, then hoist rope with river sludge hands stronger than any lady's. In the Red Keep's surviving library, Tyrion reorganized dust-stained ledgers, burning volumes of torture decrees and scribe records detailing tax punishments under the old small council. Kindling for a new era, he quipped as pages curled black in brazier flame. Samwell Tarly arrived with copies of the Night's Watch annals and asked permission to transcribe their lessons beside histories of the conquest. Tyrion gladly ceded a whole wing. Across the bay, Regal perched often on a rocky tor, eyeing fishing skiffs with predatory interest yet never diving. Local sailors learned to toss spare pike overboard as tribute. In return, the Green Dragon escorted them past shifting sandbars, its passing presence scaring sharks from nets. Word spread. The Dragon Prince of the Blackwater protected those who honored the seas. Drogon seldom left the city. He circled the charn fields at dusk, then slept near the half-rebuilt Dragon Pit. Stonemasons carved new buttresses thicker, reinforced by Valyrian steel bars shipped secretly by Cohor's smiths. Daenerys insisted no chain would again imprison her children. Yet she also ordered wide arches under each buttress so small folk could watch the dragons without fear, a promise of transparency. "They will trust what they can see," she told Jon one night as they paced the keep walkway beneath a fractured moon. Not every day warmed with hope. Some Lannister loyalists still prowled. 2 nights after first frost, 5 cloaked men ambushed an unsullied patrol near the Gate of the Gods, slitting throats then fleeing into tenement collapse. Arya tracked them by dawn, leaving 3 trussed for trial and 2 bearing notched arrow shafts to their graves. Daenerys insisted on a tribunal rather than execution without hearing, an act that earned her a dozen grudging nods from riverlords who had once feared a flaming tyrant. In those hearings, Jon sat as silent observer. He listened to confessions of fear, greed, ignorance. He watched Daenerys weigh them, balancing blood with possibility. Sometimes she pardoned. Sometimes she sentenced to labor rebuilding the very neighborhoods they had tried to burn. Once, when an unrepentant gold cloak spat at her feet, she rose and spoke in Valyrian so soft it was almost a caress. "If fire cannot melt your hate, then stone may hold it." The man was entombed in the cellars of the ruined City Watch, tasked daily with stacking skulls into memorial ossuaries. Not mercy, but not ash either. Under Sansa's guidance, the north-south grain convoys ran like breathing, out through the mud gate on the waning crescent, in through the lion gate on the waxing. She had studied Peter Baelish long enough to know how to grease palms, but she paid gilded coin for bread shipments instead of secrets. Each wagon bore painted direwolf next to a 3-headed dragon entwined, a new heraldic stencil Arya called the Beasts of Compromise. On the 24th day after the fires ceased, a raven arrived from Sunspear. The new Prince of Dorne, child of a distant Martell cousin, invited the Targaryen Stark Regency to witness a pledge of unity. Dorne would rejoin the realm in exchange for free trade of northern furs and independence of inheritance law. Daenerys penned immediate acceptance, adding a footnote promising to send grain to drought-struck Planky Town. Jon found himself smiling at how quickly they exchanged swords for quills, war cry for logistics manifest. Yet each night when torches flickered low, he remembered the screams under dragonfire, remembered Grey Worm's spear thrust through a kneeling boy, remembered the moment his hand smashed Arya's vial and frostbit Drogon's flame. The weight of almost regicide pressed heavy. He wondered if love demanded memory of the worst as proof of its honesty. The first snow of mid-autumn dusted the Red Keep's ramparts in brittle white. Unnatural for the Crownlands, but the world's rhythms had gone astray since the Night King's final winter. Jon stood at the highest parapet, eyes tracking fat flakes swirling beneath torch plumes. Below, in the courtyard where wildfire once gout, children now skated across a frozen, reflecting pool, laughing, slipping, shrieking delight. The city breathed, yes, but it also learned to play again. Daenerys joined him, cloak lined with pale marten fur. "I never thought I'd see snow on the Iron Throne's hill," she said, voice colored with wonder rather than dread. "I never thought I'd see dragons melt stone in surrender," Jon answered. He offered a small leather pouch. Inside lay 3 seeds carved from dragonglass, polished until they shone like midnight stars. Sam says these were found at Dragonstone in a casket called the Flamespeaker's Urn. Legend claims each seed grows a tree that turns flame-touched soil fertile within a year. Daenerys turned one seed between her fingers. "We shall plant them where wildfire still burns beneath. Let roots drink the poison." She caught his eye, smile tentative. Together, Jon returned smile or tried. Darkness still lurked behind his ribs. She noticed. "What troubles you?" He exhaled frosted breath. "Every day we heal 1 wound. I recall 10 new dead. Mercy stands on a heap of bones. And so does every garden." She touched his cheek. "But soil births life from decay. We will not forget the bones, but we will not kneel to them either." He pressed forehead to hers, the gesture intimate but chaste. Their love had cooled into co-regency, still bound by affection but cautious of embers. They no longer shared bed each night. Some evenings she retired to silent prayer inside the September of the Hand, while he wrote letters to Winterfell or roved watchfires with Ghost. Yet they drifted together like 2 moons orbiting the same gravity. Memory of flame, promise of dawn. "Come," she said, slipping her hand through his arm. "The council reconvenes. Today we ratify coinage." He groaned. Numismatics, truly the wheelbreaker's dream. Even dragons need accountants, she teased. They descended spiral stairs, boots echoing. At ground level, Tyrion greeted them, parchment stack clasped to breast. Good, you're punctual. I've drafted obverse designs. One shows queen and king facing opposite directions, symbol of balance. Reverse bears dire wolf embracing dragon, banner of unity. Jon raised brow. Their heads not biting? Too on the nose, Tyrion said. Merchants prefer calm jaws. Inside the council chamber, lords awaited. Fewer armed guards now, more scribes. Davos manned a chalkboard tracking grain yields. Gendry passed around iron slugs as sample coins. Varys unfurled a silk map of trade winds. Brienne, Podrick, and Grey Worm stood at perimeter, unlikely triad of martial steadiness. Discussion blossomed. Copper standards pegged to braided silver. Mint houses established halfway between Old Town and King's Landing to keep weight honest. New laws forbidding debt prisons. Jon contributed weather data from ravens streaming south. Early frost in the Vale, bumper apple harvest in White Harbor. Daenerys approved a plan for dragon patrols over shipping lanes to deter pirates. Rhaegal scheduled to nest near Tarth for winter. At midday, ravens arrived with 2 breakthroughs. The Iron Bank agreed to refinance post-war rebuilding at half interest in exchange for mining rights in the new gift. And the Citadel announced a College of the Rising Dawn dedicated to teaching dragon lore, wildfire science, and greenseer mysteries to any child of the realm. Base campus to be built atop the scorched shell of Maegor's Sept, transforming ruin into knowledge. That evening, the city feasted on its first communal meal since conquest. Fish stew spiced with Dornish peppers, barley loaves from the Reach, root vegetables grown in hastily sown victory gardens along the Street of Flour. Jon sat on a low bench beside a one-eyed ironsmith who had watched his son die during the flames but now told jokes about hammering nails into fate. Daenerys danced a slow measure with a maimed, unsullied drummer whose missing fingers still found rhythm on a goatskin frame. Sansa shared lemon cakes with the small folk children, teaching them northern ballads. Arya passed cups of watered wine to exhausted pyromancers, coaxing their stories of ancient Valyria. Dawn found Jon sleeping inside a half-collapsed bell tower, ghost curled at his feet. He woke to the hush of falling snow mingling with the distant clamor of masons. A single raven perched on the broken sill. It cocked its head, and in it Jon sensed Bran's silent approval or warning, difficult to know. But the raven flew when he rose, and he took that as enough. Months became seasons. Winter lingered long in the highlands but mellowed in the crownlands. Wheat grew again in the Reach by the time the first harvest under the joint regency came due. Ships ferried goods from the Jade Sea now emblazoned with the Two Beasts sigil. When Dornish envoys arrived at court with sweet wine and an offer of marital alliance, for whichever of your graces desires a southern counterpart, Daenerys laughed for the first time in Jon's memory without shadow lurking behind her eyes. She politely declined but sent back dragonglass goblets, promising future camaraderie. They never wed. Quietly they concluded the realm needed neither wedding nor singular throne but an armature. A pair of axes forming X on which the broken will could spin without grinding bones. So they remained co-monarchs, hearts bound by battle even if not by ring. Their chambers stayed separate, their council seats together. The people whispered pet names, Stormwolf and Dragondawn. But tongues eventually settled on the twin flames. Jon disliked the flourish. Daenerys found it amusing, but neither disavowed it. Bran visited only once, borne south in a litter of weirwood branches drawn by white elk gifted from Skagos. He slid his chair onto the terrace overlooking the rebuilt dragon pit and simply gazed a long hour while Drogon and Rhaegal swooped above. When he spoke, it was a single sentence. The threads are still fragile, but the loom holds firm. Then he turned north again, refusing all feast entreaties. Jon suspected Bran saw further than mortal hearts could stand. Grey Worm left for Noth that spring, boarding a black-hulled ship with reed sails. Before departure, he clasped Jon's forearm. No words, only that, and the slight dip of his head to the Queen. Daenerys watched vessel vanish across gently rippled sea, tears welling, yet she smiled, mournful, proud. 8 years later, on an autumn morning glimmering with gold leaves falling through warm blue, a pair of teenagers sparred in the God's Eye courtyard. One dark-haired boy with laughing gray eyes, the other a silver-haired girl whose braid whipped like shining rope each time she spun. Jon and Daenerys watched from a balcony. "He's quick," Jon observed. "She's quicker," Daenerys argued, grin tugging at her lips. Steel kissed steel below, wouldn't practice swords today. The boy lunged, the girl rolled, flicked blade to back of his ankles. He toppled with indigna. Enti cry, then laughed as she offered hand to pull him up. Their mirth echoed under freshly mortared arches. Jon leaned on rail. "Think the realm ready for twin heirs?" Daenerys brushed silver strands from her brow. "The realm learned to balance twin flames once. It will again." She squeezed his arm. "And if not, they'll keep each other honest." He chuckled. "Reminds me of 2 stubborn leaders I knew. Did they end well?" she teased. "Stories still being written." He turned to her, snow and ash memories flickering behind his gaze. Then he looked out across the rebuilt city, roofs tiled red again, market stalls bursting with oranges and northern cranberries, harbor cranes loading barrels of glass candle oil bound for Karth. Somewhere bells chimed midday, familiar bells, not of surrender but of commerce. Their echo warmed more than sun. The girl below shouted triumph, raising blade. The boy bowed theatrically. People above applauded. Even Ghost, scar-muzzled but still fierce, wagged tail. Jon spoke softly. "May they never need know the taste of vengeance." Daenerys nodded. "And if vengeance finds them, let mercy meet it sooner." They stood side by side while wind tugged cloaks. High overhead, 2 dragons traced lazy circles, carving invisible sigils into endless sky. No fire reigned, only morning sun glancing off bronze and black scales. And on the stones where wildfire once devoured flesh, a sapling sprouted, dark as dragonglass, leaves glossy, roots splitting cracks wider to drink hidden water. Children called it the ash tree. Maesters named it the first dawn oak. It grew quickly, nurtured by strange minerals and stories whispered at its trunk. Tales of a king who never wanted a crown, a queen who unlearned fear, and a city that rose, burned, and rose once more, each rebirth truer than the last. In years to come the ash tree would shade thousands from summer blaze, its seeds carried by gulls as far as Skagos and Sunspear, its wood carved into lutes that sang both sorrow and hope in equal measure. And whenever a winter gale rattled its branches, some swore they heard twin voices intertwined, wolf and dragon, mercy and fire, reminding the realm that the world can break and still be beautiful, so long as those who lead remember both the chill of snow and the scorch of flame. For mercy, once planted, grows tallest where ashes lie deepest.